Yep. We gotta spend it anyway, right?
Yeah, I can't take it.
We don't even have half that much in there, do we?
I don't know. Okay. It's 5 o'clock. Let's start this work session. Just as we're jumping right into the items, but I will say thank you for coming to the audience member. So, first item on the agenda is purchase of a crack sealer. And I think that's Aaron's wheelhouse here, so I'll let him present.
I'll leap right into it then.
Yep.
So, yeah, going through the streets, figuring out the sequence of maintenance that we really need to kind of abide by if we want to make sure everything's getting taken care of efficiently and without, throwing away money. Cal went out with me. Dan's been everywhere. We've looked around, and starts with really the first step is to get drainage dealt with, which we still have some issues. Then we went into pothole patching, and then patch sealing. But one critical step we missed in there is crack sealing. So talking to Dan and talking to Pennington County, Dustin and his guys, they contract out their crack sealing. So after kind of looking around a little bit online, I found a solution that I think would work for us very well in the long term. So this is a crack sealing unit, single operator, pretty much as bare bones as you can get, while being able to do everything we really need it to do. And there are a few options here. The base model, the sort of in between, and then this is kind of where I'm leaning as what we would be best looking at, partly because it comes with the torch. So to get into it, the patch sealing we did, the chip and tar, really isn't effective on cracks from what the guys from Pennington County told me, and just from generally what I've learned about road maintenance. That tar doesn't really seal cracks over the long term. So what these units and typical crack sealing does is it injects a rubber into the crack, which seals it, but it also can expand with it over time. And this unit is about as compact as they get. Typically when you'll see them doing crack sealing, they'll have a wand, and the heater unit will be in the back of the truck. That's a lot of extra equipment, a lot of cost, and various other maintenance aspects. Where this unit is pretty much as simple and straightforward as you can get. And we don't need sound, so I'll go ahead and kill that. But
So does it come out hot then?
it comes out hot. So what the unit does, it heats the material with propane,
Oh, okay, okay.
and then injects it out into the road crack. And here it'll get to in a second to where, yeah, so that's basically the operation of it.
Yeah, it just runs on a 5 or a 20-pound bottle.
Yep. And
That's
so,
nice.
yep.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, very
How
simple.
much is the material to go with it?
So the about a half a pallet is $1,500, and I figure that would last us a good 5 years.
How many, I mean,
It does say on the material orders how much linear feet each
Yeah.
order will do.
it doesn't really tell us anything though, because, cracks are what they are, right? So it's not like you can say, well, we can do this many feet of road, because it's all completely variable with how many cracks are in any
Right,
spot
right.
on the road.
Yeah, the material, I think it shows linear feet of how much crack sealer you can
Yeah.
apply is what it comes down to.
Oh, would you say 1,500?
Yeah, so the unit with the torch, and the purpose of the torch is for burning out vegetation and also drying out the cracks when you need to.
Oh,
That's
okay.
2,200.
And so the unit without the torch and without those little handles you see there is 1,900. So for about an extra 300, you get the handles, a digital readout, and the torch. The torch alone is a $280 part. So long term, it just isn't practical to use any less than that. And then we go into the material. Let's go back out. Crack filling, crack fillers. All right, so there's a few different grades, and I would want to talk to the manufacturer for a recommendation, but from what I can gather so far, these hot applied jacketed sealants are the ones municipalities want to use. These are more for like really low traffic driveways and things, and these are slightly higher grades for doing actual road surfaces. So this is, as you see, about half a pallet.
Dang.
And each of those is basically a solid block of rubber that goes in the machine, and then it heats it up. It has an agitator that mixes it until it get it a uniform consistency, and then it just starts pumping out.
Could we just buy it by the box?
Um,
Like just buy like 5 boxes to see how long that would last before we go after a whole pallet?
yeah, let's see.
Just, I mean, cause where are we gonna store that, you know?
I don't know if
Is
they.
it one pallet? Is that what it says?
That was a half a pallet.
Half a pallet? Well, a pallet, if it's a pallet, that's not that big.
Yeah, and there's also packages, which one of them,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
like this.
Yeah, there you go.
So, which I don't know, I didn't really look. All right, so this is like the base model unit,
Wow.
It's not the.
It's not the Cadillac?
and this comes with the more driveway, very low traffic.
Yeah.
They have a package with the one you were looking at, the 2200 one?
They do not. That one would be the Elite, and these are Pro. Yeah, it doesn't look like they offer any packages with the Elite unit.
So do the blocks of sealer, do they have a shelf life at all?
That's a good question. That's definitely something I would ask them about. I don't imagine so. I mean, it's
I know.
straight up block of rubber,
Block
you
of
know.
rubber.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there would be, but that's something that we need to take into account if we're gonna get a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So,
So I want to let me get back to the material. I did see somewhere, so I'll see if I can find it on.
Aaron, if we don't use all the block of tar, can you leave it in the machine or do you have to use all of it up?
Right, so as I understand, you can leave it in the machine. And what's one thing I think that's a real selling point of this unit rather than the others is the fact that it's ejecting oil or the rubber directly out of the machine. It only goes through about that much pipe before it hits the road.
It's not going to get clogged up.
Right, and they said you can just remove that, soak it in solvent, and it's good as new, where like those back of the truck units with the long wand, you know, you've got 10, 15 feet of hose that could end up with
Hard rubber.
hard rubber
Yep.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing to look at too is if you can buy that piece, that injection nozzle,
Oh, the little,
buy an extra one or 2 extra ones.
to just hot swap them?
Yeah, and then if it does get clogged up, you swap it, dump it in the bucket, and then you can keep going.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, as far as clogging, I think clogging, so it also has another thing about this unit. What you see up, I believe there's some kind of an agitator, which the base model doesn't actually have. And I'm trying to get to see. So like this one, it has the torch mounted.
And what's
You know,
the-
that might be the handle to drive the agitator right there.
So what's
The
the
digital
agitator
readout,
for?
is that
Just kinda
the
mix it up once it's
distance
hot.
that you've used on your block or how much?
Oh, that's
is
the
left?
temperature
The temperature of the,
of the
Mix.
rubber. Yeah, it needs to be 400 degrees to extrude properly. Then there's also like future expandables. So like these are, if you get to the point where you're doing a lot, where you can't take the time involved of putting a block of rubber in and letting it heat up, you can get back of the truck units or whatever, or even the smaller tank, so that you can transfer rubber that's already melted into the road unit.
Oh,
You know, so you can like keep moving. But as far as given how much asphalt we actually have, I mean, what do we got? Maybe 4 miles, if that, 3 miles.
so you're saying down the road you
I
could
doubt it's even
purchase
30
the
miles.
back of the truck melter and it would still be usable in the small unit?
So this would be like an
You could have
add-on.
it heating and then you could swap them?
Not even swap. So you'd have the unit going, and as it runs low, you'd have more heating up in here, and then just pump it from this into the.
We got a big job.
Through another hose or something?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And I mean, it's,
So
you
you
know,
wouldn't
it's,
be like out of this and have to try to sell it to buy the next one.
right. And that's one thing I love about a machine like this is it is about as simple as you can possibly get. There are basically no moving parts, except,
The agitator.
yeah, the agitator. It's a
The
box
heating
that,
unit.
yeah.
What's it weigh?
What's it weigh?
Oh, good question. Specs. On the fly
67,
agitation.
empty weight 167.8.
Yeah, 167
Max capacity
pounds.
weight 290.
Yeah.
So
So
170 before you fill
those
it.
blocks are 130 pounds.
Yeah,
Then you're talking
Wow.
200 pounds.
that's a
just
big
thinking.
solid hunk of rubber,
Yeah, you're right.
right?
That's
I
a
mean,
heck of a bouncy ball.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said, it weighs less than I expected, but then
Oh, yeah.
the tar or the block rubber is more than I expected.
I know.
And so, considering all that, you know, what's freight gonna cost, and doesn't have free shipping, I'm sure.
Free shipping on the unit and the
Does it?
material,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
You can't beat that then.
Yeah.
So how does that fit into your street budget?
So, yeah, so really what got me looking at this, the patch seal guys came around, and it came out to around the neighborhood of about $3,000 a day. Now, talking with Dan, there's quite a few places that were cracks that they didn't hit because I guess over the time since they've had this equipment, they've learned that it's not really what they did isn't really effective for cracks. Pennington contracts out their crack seal.
Yeah.
So Dan was hoping they would do the cracks as well. They ended up not doing them, and the way I figure it would probably be a solid day of them working to go around and do all the cracks, and it's about $3,000 a day for them to work. So this is basically the cost of one day of patch sealing. And we can do it whenever we need it. We can have it sitting in the shop ready to rock and roll. As soon as a crack
My
opens
point
up.
was, have you checked your street budget to know where you're at on that?
Well, it's
Yeah.
gonna be blown away by the time we get
Well, here's,
to
yeah,
the chip seal.
yeah.
Because we usually do what, 30,000 a year? What's in there?
We're at remaining about 32,000 after the patch
What
seal.
percentage are you at? I don't know where you started.
We started, total for this year is allocated 56,600. We've spent about 24,000.
So you're starting.
But we haven't paid for the Pennington County yet. That's
Right, after we
That'll
pay,
be 12,000 we're gonna pay to them for those 4 days every year,
well, that's
right?
that's with that. Yeah,
Oh,
we're
that's
at
with
about
that.
24,000
Oh,
including
okay,
that.
gotcha.
So right now, remaining is about 32,000.
I would have to assume, not knowing for sure, but your street maintenance, your street costs would be less in the winter.
Right.
Because you aren't gonna be out there doing this, you might do some plowing.
Well, that's
usually contracted, so.
That's actually one nice thing about having this unit, is if we can hit these cracks as soon as they open, then we can stop them from turning into potholes.
Really?
That's the problem, is that all the issues on asphalt, it starts off as a crack, then, you know, it gets wet, cars go over it, and you see the dirt geyser out of that crack. Before you know it, it caves in, and then it busts open, and they have a pothole. Where we have this in the shop, oh, there's a crack over on Whitney, go out, seal it, done.
Yeah, awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
After
So-
doing the line one, you're saving a lot of money.
20,000 budgeted for repairs and maintenance, and we've spent, not quite, we spent
Right.
1,300.
Equipment really
Right.
doesn't fall into
So
repairs
that-
and maintenance, though.
Is that in addition to the 56.6 or is that
That's part
part
of it.
of
I'm
the
just,
56?
I'm
Okay.
just trying to, because you wouldn't want to take, because we have a contract, and that's where Chuck's check comes out, is he can't do anything with that. Snow removal, that's kind of part of Chuck's stuff too, and mowing. I mean, those are kind of some things you wouldn't want to try to dip into because.
and utilities is 15,000, and we can pretty reliably count on us spending all that on utilities. And we've only spent 6,800.
Well, the only thing that counts with this piece of
Or-
equipment would be your
no.
street budget, or unless you have a separate equipment budget.
Well, part of the street budget includes like electrical for all the street
Oh,
lights
right,
and for
right.
Chuck
Yeah, but
removing snow
you
and
wouldn't take money
mowing
from
in the
there and use
summer.
it for equipment, so.
We
No,
have
part of that is repair and maintenance and part of that is.
we have 7,500 allotted for supplies and materials, and we've spent
We don't have an equipment
$15
line
of
in
it.
the street budget.
Right.
So you kind of gotta play with some
Still, year and a half, the year's almost half over, so you're doing
Right.
pretty good.
Right, I think we're.
Yeah, so this is more introductory, everybody can take their time to think of it.
Yeah.
The good way to see where this would apply is Whitney. You'll see where they did the patch seal, and you'll see where there's still cracks wide open.
That need to
Um,
be something done.
So I have a question, do you have a question?
I have a question. Wondering if, you had mentioned contacting the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Just a couple of questions I guess I'd like you to ask him, as if they have any special pricing for municipalities, because obviously we're tax exempt, but if they do anything else for government accounts maybe?
All right, this is,
And if they could put a package together with the pro unit. If they could make, since they didn't have a package with that unit that we wanted. And then the cost of a couple extra nozzles.
just a couple extra nozzles.
And maybe if they do have government pricing, it might be better than a package with the pro unit. I don't know.
Come on,
Save
Dan.
the light outside. Is that it? Where's mine? Should be handing those out.
Deb's got them,
I have a question, so on this process here, A, who's gonna run it, and B, after the crack is sealed, then what? Do we need to put some of that rock on there, or, what needs to happen as soon as it cools from 400 down to ambient, it's good to go, or?
Yeah, so it's ready to rock and roll as soon as it cools. Now, like you saw when they did out on the highway, a lot of them, they'll put the white tape over it for the first X time of traffic. We could do that. I don't even think they offer the tape, but we could do that. I don't think we have the traffic that really necessarily needs that.
Yeah. I would just as soon just throw rocks on it, or some chips or whatever, like we did on the other one.
We could. This is a little different than the asphalt patching and stuff. This is very adamant about it being completely dry and free of vegetation and any sort of dirt. So really clean the crack out really good. Where the patches there tend to be like, once you get all the loose stuff out, you can just throw it in there and go to
So
town.
do you have to
Yeah.
blow the cracks out before you crack seal it?
Air compressor or something?
That would be a
Is
good
there-
idea. Not
Is there a
absolutely
blower out
necessary,
with
but
it?
no, they do sell a compressor unit, but we could do it cheaper.
Well, I just wondered if it was part of the
And so the person has to
process.
be able to push 300 pounds. There's no motorized guide like a lawnmower would have or something.
No, but it's
So who's gonna run it then?
You're gonna push 300.
So what
Let them
I
do
would
it.
want to do is set up an SOP for it, and then we can actually deal with the long-term operation of it over the long term. But one thing I've kind of been thinking about, especially with something like this, it's not a constant throughout the year need. If we could set up to where we have somebody can get certified on using it, and then it would be handled almost contracted, but similar to the way we do water meter readings and.
Oh, okay.
So we could essentially have a person who wants to operate it, get trained on how to do so, and go from there. And we could set up an hourly wage for them, whatever it would end up being.
Okay,
But-
so that's all estimates, and we'll need to see too. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you too, do you know if there's anyone in town that rents one of these, so we could test it out and see what the deal is before we commit to buy and
Call Simon's rental thing.
to have to dedicate a new person and all this other stuff?
Everyone I've seen, they use the wands and the back of the unit truck. And every team I've seen is 3 or 4 people. So you're talking, compared to what we could do with
You're thinking this could be a one-man operation.
one man with, if necessary, a flagger. And it's a fast unit. You have it heated up, you get to where you need to do the crack, you seal it, you load up, and you go.
Yeah,
Be able to just set cones around it.
But you don't know if anybody around town rents a push-behind unit like this?
I've never seen one of these in use at all. All the guys I've seen who do work around here, they all use the wands with the big back and the truck
Well,
heater.
bigger.
What kind
Yeah.
of
It's a
equipment
bigger
is
operation for them.
Baker have out there now in his new place? Have you been out there?
Nothing like that, no. And I did talk to J&J Asphalt about this too, because I said, looks like a pretty cool outfit. And he said, they are, if you have a public works or a department specifically to be able to operate it. He said,
Right.
sometimes if you're on a slope, he said, it's gonna take 2 people to operate it on a slope, any kind of incline, because they're a little more difficult on that. Because he said, they used to get into that, and then with all of these Black Hills Asphalt, and there's 4 of them in town that do crack seal. And he said, plus all the parking lot guys. He said, it wasn't worth our time. We stayed with the asphalt, the cold patch, and doing what they were doing. And he said that was the best circumstance. But he said, you're gonna find out that if you don't have 2 to 3 guys to be able to run that thing, nobody's gonna wanna touch it because it's hot, it's miserable. He said, that's why the wand is such a good thing, because you're not right by the heat of the machine when it's heated up. Because he said, if you're out on an even 80-degree day with that thing, it'll cook you.
Yeah.
So he said, so many of them will try to do super early spring or late fall on doing it. And he said, the tape is the best way to go about it. He said, there's no doubt about it. He said, because otherwise it's gonna be all over somebody's vehicle and you're gonna be getting called on it, you're gonna be cleaning vehicles. So he said, he's been doing it for 50 years, 60 years now, and
Right.
he said, man, it is a tough deal. So, and he said if they made a motorized one, which they do, he said they go to another level, but he said you jump twice as much in cost.
Well, he was looking. Was he? I didn't see any motorized units from this.
A motorized and a handbrake would be nice.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
said
that's it.
motorized and a handbrake would be nice.
That's a good point, is operating it on a slope when it's 300 pounds, you know, and it's gonna wanna go wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And then there's only one set of handles on that thing, with the
So
person
he
walking
said you
behind
almost
it.
got a carabiner it
Yeah, right.
with a rope
Uh-huh,
with a guy on the front of it to be able to go across. And if
Yeah.
you're trying to do angles with it, you know, in several different spots, he said,
yeah.
it is a real bear cat.
And then the other thing too is the blocks are over 100 pounds. You gotta load it up with that.
Let me see.
He said if you could.
I have a question when you have a
survey-
minute.
I'm sorry.
Linda has a question. She's on the phone.
Are you
He
done?
said if you could, like they used to have, like the government surplus yards, if a guy could find one, the counties always had them, which they do have them, state. He said sometimes you can come across them for the cost of this machine at an auction, if you're gonna seriously get into it.
With the hose
With the
one?
wand, yep.
Okay.
Because he said you'd be so much more comfortable, and then he said one guy was set up with flashing lights, can go ahead and do himself on it, and in a community of this size and no more asphalt than we have, would be a better circumstance, he thought.
They do have wand units.
All right. Linda, did you have a question?
Yeah, so what I'm understanding here is this is a small unit that would fit inside like the bed of a truck?
No, it's more like,
Oversized lawnmower.
well, yeah,
Big cooler on it.
it's like a walk behind unit with wheels on it that you push, like you would a lawnmower, but it's kind of like,
A road tiller.
yeah,
An
it's
art
more,
tiller.
it's more shaped like a tiller, kind of tall and skinny rather than the shape of a mower.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's looking at asphalt, what is it, Asphalt Kingdom?
Asphalt Kingdom, yeah.
If you go to asphaltkingdom.com, on your phone, and then you look at the unit that costs $21.99. That's the one that he's looking at right now.
Okay, all right. So the big thing then, it's a small unit. It can be stored anywhere. I mean, we have storage space for it. Let's just say we store it in the shop right there close to the office. So then the person that runs it basically grabs a hold of it and walks it down to Whitney to seal a crack. Is that correct?
It can be lifted up with a couple of people and loaded into the back of a truck
Okay.
for transport.
And how efficiently clean? How clean is it? So, in other words, we don't own a truck. You know, the town does not own a truck, so we're going to be counting on basically whoever's doing the job using their truck.
Right.
And how messy of a product is that? And is that going to become a sort of a liability issue?
No, it looks like the cover locks closed from what it looks like.
Maybe just a mat on their bed of the truck.
It's gonna have a valve, which looks like that handle is what you open and close the valve with right there. I wouldn't see it as being anything that our public works guys wouldn't be more than used to dealing with, or any road maintenance person.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for.
Do you think you could add a handbrake to that? I mean, the cable couldn't be I mean, if the machine is hot, cable, obviously you don't want,
We
it just have to be a steel cable on the outside running up, but why couldn't you?
I think we're. I mean, you may be able to put some sort of brake on the wheel, but I don't think really that would be necessary. If something like that was necessary or common, then they would have offered as an option.
Okay, well, my thought is, maybe they haven't thought of it, but if you had a handbrake for each front wheel, it would help you turn the unit when you might be sloping. You know, it would help in your turning, like a sled, you know? You pull one side and it turns you to one side, vice versa. And pulling both might help you slow it down going down the slope.
So these are the wheels, and they are intentionally
They're steel.
very thin, so you can roll over what
Like a
you've crack
disc
sealed.
almost.
Right, so you can roll over what you've crack sealed without grabbing a hold of it.
Is this
And with the front
is this
row.
unit more suited for parking lots?
It kind of looked that way, didn't it?
I think that's probably their market, but at the same time, they do supply the municipality materials.
Yeah.
All the oil jacketed, that's all recommended for streets and highway and
But then that
airports.
would be
Airports is one thing I saw a lot.
yeah.
Very popular for this unit is airports.
And they're all flat,
Yeah.
and we're very hilly around here. That would be my main concern.
So how much does it cost to contract the crack seal guys to come out and seal the ones that we have right now?
I have not quoted crack seals, but
If it took a day, it was 3,000.
I just guesstimate you're gonna be looking at least this much
Yeah.
for a day of contracting a crack sealer team.
But how often do we have to do that? So once a year or once every 2 years or?
So this kind of goes back to the moisture is your enemy. You want to be able to hit a crack when it opens, and if we have our own machine and we have a crack open up and we can hit it, we could potentially save ourselves a pothole.
Yeah, we could also put UPM on it too, right?
On the crack, it's not really effective on cracks.
Oh, okay. Donna?
Well, what I'm thinking is, with the amount of places we're probably gonna use it, I don't think we want to get into the big dollars, because then we'll have big dollars sitting over there collecting dust.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, so I really, what got me on this was going back to is if we had had Dustin's team, if we had had Pennington take care of cracks using the method they had in the past, then 1 year would have one road would have cost us this much. So it's more of a, this is a long game. And hopefully, we
I
do have the
understand
hope
that
that we're
too,
gonna
yeah.
expand our asphalt, you know, and pave more roads.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a direct one-to-one comparison though, cause we don't have the cost for, running it, you know, and how much that would be to pay the guys to do it and everything like that, and then, I mean, you know, you gotta add tax and things like that to it too, so I mean, it's, so the prices here is $21.99 plus about $1,500 for the half pallet,
Mm-hmm.
so what's that, that's 31, 36,
About 37.
37, so 3,700, and then that, you know, we gotta add cost for the guys to run it, and then that would basically be our cost for the first go of it type of thing, you know what I mean? The first application and filling all the cracks.
So I guess where I'm at, I will contact the manufacturer and see if they have guidance on things like road coverage, how much
Yeah.
area a given amount of the material is going to cost. I did see somewhere it's a crack once sealed is about 3 years. You get about 3 years out of a seal. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'll try to get a quote or estimate on having a crack seal contractor come out
Yeah,
and
that'd
see
be
how
nice.
that's going to look.
And then also, obviously, how long it would take them, right? A day or two, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Shannon?
And what we're thinking is basically this would pay for itself within this season. Based
Yeah.
on what the need is for this. With the TIFs that we're doing, we haven't really got into the plans of them, but we have been very lenient on our street requirements and allowing gravel instead of blacktop. Are we going to be requiring blacktop on the 3 TIFs for those neighborhoods? Because once we adopt those streets, they become our problem where this would really be handy down the road. So maybe it's something we budget for next year, or
I don't think any of the TIFs, they're all residential TIFs. I don't think any of them are going to accumulate anywhere near enough for them to justify paving roads. Right?
Yeah,
Once.
so we're gonna allow gravel on all of them.
What do you think, Dan? Is there any chance they could get enough out of a TIF to be able to pave the developments?
That's what killed this one, that was $1 million.
To pave it?
And curb and gutter and sidewalk?
Yeah.
And that was above and beyond with the curb and gutter. That was just blacktop.
Wow.
That was our
You know,
quote.
so you add that into the equation,
Yeah.
it'll ruin that. And that's why I think with this, I think you're on the right track. If a guy can get a wand one, if you're gonna do that, fine. If a guy ends up chip sealing everything right now, with the way everything has been done, other than Second Street, there'd be no reason to crack seal, because the chip seal would seal it all. And then if you fogged it, it would seal it all, and then take care of the whole problem, and not have to worry about this at the present. And then it's just a matter, if a guy gets on the system then with Pennington County, after you chip seal everything, then it's just basic maintenance. If you get a crack that opens up, it's cheaper and cheaper for them, and then we deal with no labor if a guy doesn't get a public works established, because it's hard for volunteer help to do and stay on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's why we talked about First Second over here, North Second, possibly just buying hot patch from J&J at $112 a ton versus $180 a ton, and use on the shoulders where needed over here, and then let them chip seal and let them rock and roll through. And I wouldn't even go to the crack seal then. If a guy can chip seal Ferguson, North Second, possibly Fifth. I mean, on this quote
Whitney.
here, they've got everything but Fifth on here.
But-
For this
So
amount.
this bid from Simon or Simon, is that going to cover what we're talking about here?
No. Chip seal does not do the same job of crack seal.
but it will for what we have presently. Because we've gotten the worst of all of it patch sealed by the county.
Yeah. All right, so I mean, are you guys good with the crack seal discussion? Can we move on to the chip seal?
Yeah, I'll get some more information on what it would be, really what the cost would be. Because if we want, the whole idea is to get it set up so that we're following the maintenance routine, and crack seal is a component of that. So whether we're gonna do it ourselves or contract it out.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Everybody good to go on to chip seal?
Kind of, I'm confused on the two.
Why's that?
Well, one, Dan is saying we wouldn't need to do the crack seal if we do the chip seal, so I guess, do your research, but that, if we're doing the crack seal and it costs about the same as what it would cost us to have somebody do it, and it's paid for itself in 1 year, that's a good thing, other than if we're doing this chip seal that we're gonna talk about, that you're saying is covered, so we really wouldn't need to deal with crack seal at this season.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I guess I'm kinda confused on that.
So we're gonna have a bit of a difference of opinion on here, but I talked directly to Dustin. I talked to Sam. They do not use chip seal or patch seal as a way to fill cracks and seal cracks. They use crack seal. So it's a completely different material, and it's very purpose oriented. So it injects down into the crack. Where the chip seal, you get that coat over, and it's good for a period of time, but it's not really, that's not what it's designed for. And that's not where you, like, generally,
Right,
even
so
the
crack
highway,
sealer goes down into the crack, fills it,
and then the chip seal goes over top of
and
it.
the chip seals just covers it up for, Band-Aids it basically.
Yeah, and so like when they did the highway, was it a year or two ago? They did this whole highway.
Mhm.
They came through and they crack sealed and then chip sealed
Okay.
when they did that.
Okay, thank you.
But
Helps.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on officially to the chip seal quote. And I think that's, again, you're gonna be your discussion right here.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't that gorgeous? I designed it.
So he kind of covered the lengthier areas. He left out a few. He said he could supplement any quotes like Second Street and everything. I mean, we can probably just start with the numbers. The mobilization is a heavy hitter. $10,000 mobilization, $5,000 if we break it up. So what that kind of says is we lose. It really is kind of an all or nothing. Well, not necessarily, but that's how I would look at it, as one mobilization. What they do during that mobilization is what they do, and the more they do it, yeah, the more they do at a time, the more worth it it's going to be. However, $73,000 is way outside the scope of anything close to what we have in our street budget. And I tried to look back, and what I found is that over the past 5 years, there's been some fluctuations, some surpluses, some overages. And if I take all those and put them together, there was about $7,000 throughout the 5 years. There's about $7,000 total surplus. If we were to supplement our street budget right now with $7,000, it would put us at 63, which is what the budget was in 21. So it would kind of get us to where we're on par with the budget as it's been over the past 5 years. But that would still leave us 30-some thousand dollars short.
But it's not really a surplus because that's all been
Right. Right now we're
rectified into the general fund at the end of each year.
yeah,
But
we're
I can see where you're getting the numbers from, but
and we're 56.6 right now. 21 was 63, 22 was 62, 23 went up to 77, and they still, oh no, they actually ended up surplus that year, and then 24 they went way over $23,000 over. So a $7,000 supplement would give it us to like average year-over-year budget, but it still doesn't come anywhere near the 73,000. Now, if you look at what they did they covered an enormous amount of the road with the patch seal.
Who did?
Pennington.
Oh, okay.
So
Just
a
now.
lot of the portions of this quote would actually be recovering the work they did. Would be,
But they're probably
Going-
not gonna,
well-
they're gonna have to recover the whole thing, I mean, they're not.
that's right, exactly. If they do it, they do it all or nothing, right?
Which makes sense.
Right. So kind of what I'm thinking is considering how much patch sealing we've already had done, we may be better off taking some time to dial in everything, potholes, drainage, fix up North Second, and then have Dustin's guys come back and do more patch sealing and hold chip sealing off for now.
So is Dustin the guy from, Bennington
Pennington, yeah.
County?
And it just, I mean, it comes down to budget. That is a very, very big
Yeah.
span to cover.
Well, that's just it, and I mean,
Or
I have
Shannon
a
and
question
Dan.
for Dan.
Yep.
Over the last few years, I know there was a point where they took you off streets and they basically quit doing street work for a while, thinking it was a waste of money, and then they got in really bad shape. That's my understanding of the basic past history of it. Doing this, does this get us caught up to where it's not going to be $72,000 every year?
Well, and the thing
Is
is,
this
I don't,
rebuilding what we have lost because we haven't been maintaining like we should?
and I guess I'm blown away by that because there wasn't nothing done for 2 years.
Well,
There
that's
was a
why
little bit
I
of-
thought there would be extra, but there wasn't. It's,
I don't know where it
it
went.
pretty much all
because-
got spent. The sidewalk project
24
was a big
was the
one.
sidewalk project came out, and that was something I don't think they budgeted for. And then we ended up, it actually paid, I think in January of 24 is when the payment actually came out, so that's what blew that
Because we
budget.
never did no mag water,
Yeah.
we didn't do very little.
And the other
pothole
years, I
work,
don't
as
know.
you can tell, there was just no maintenance, period.
And I was fully expecting that to show up in the numbers, but it just didn't.
See, and that's where I expressed clear back in when the sidewalk project was going, they needed to do a separate supplement for that and leave the street budget alone. But instead, just so they could rob Peter and pay Paul, they did it, knowing that maintenance put on that and applied into it. But my thoughts were, and this is me on what the streets are, if we, as what you said, we chip seal Ferguson, chip seal North Second, and then chip seal Fifth are the worst. The ones that are the immediate that need to be done. They can mobilize and do all of that. Then if we got Dustin down here for maybe 2 more days to finish patch sealing the rest of the cracks coming around, because we used him for patch sealing, which did the same thing as crack sealing, because he put so much product on, and it would go into the cracks and seal the cracks. That's why when I broomed it, it was a good situation, and all the years that we did it that way, prior to the board change, worked awesome. As you can, I showed Aaron the old patches, and how much it actually works into it, and works down into every crack. So when I had them do everything, every crack, every seam, every spider, every, which I call alligator, I'd have them do it all, the whole thing, all the way through. I would not have them jump anything. And that way, everything was sealed. Then on the immediate ones, even what we've done on Ferguson, what we've done on North Second, when they broom it, they'll take a little bit of the chips off, and the oil has already worked its way down in, and they'll smooth it off, then they'll chip seal everything over the top, and then I definitely have them fog it. If you did them 3, which are the worst, because as I expressed, if you don't do them, and you figure it was gonna be $100,000 to pave Fifth Street by itself. So you take each one of them in that length, there's $300,000 if we have to build them back again. So to do a supplement here, to do what we have to do on the roads versus what you could lose on infrastructure is a no-brainer to me.
You're gonna say no brainer, it's no brainer.
So to me, if, I think they
about
are
Whitney
70,000 for what they wanna do now. Probably for them, they're gonna be in about that 30 to 40 range to do Ferguson, to do North Second, to do Fifth. And then if you get 2 more days with Dustin down here, which is, let's say worst case scenario, $3,500 a day, there's $7,000. So you would be roughly 47, and you would have Whitney second, all patch sealed. You chip seal the other 3, and then I figured what I had to dig out before they chip sealed all the way up, I donated my time back and my water truck, my dump truck, everything else back. It was like $1,600 to do that whole thing, which 90% of was material. All I got back was my fuel to do that clear back in the day. So on this patch over here, to do that again, you guys gonna have a cut saw to cut that boil out on 5th Street before it can be chip sealed, and then come in with the Bobcat and dig it down a foot to 16 inches, take the material out, bring in inch to inch and a half clean rock, fill that thing up to within 4 inches, and then millings over the top with water and pack that in. I figure a guy's probably gonna have a maximum of labor in it, I would say $2,500. And then material is just whatever the rock is. And rock is 500 a load. I figure a guy's gonna have 2 loads of rock, and we have the millings.
So you're at close to 55,
To do
55K?
everything. Right.
So what's that for? That's doing what's
Chip
on here?
sealing the 3, patch sealing the rest of 2nd Whitney, and fixing the boil on 5th, and chip sealing that. Because in the long run, like I told Aaron, Droppable is a great example. That was a gravel road. The county chip sealed that. That road is a chip seal road. And they have done that 3 times on chip seal on it now. So they have built that into a blacktop road. All of Doffenbaugh going back to where it goes to the Spring Creek cutoff, coming down to where it's gravel.
Right.
But if we ever go to decide to start doing more in town, chip seal, and most small towns, all the small towns east of us, that's what they do, chip seal. That's how they get the roads, because nobody can afford to pave
Yeah.
at the rates we are, so.
So how'd you go from the 74 to the 55?
By only patch sealing Whitney and 2nd,
Okay.
up to here, then we will be
And you're,
basically chip sealing North 2nd, chip sealing Ferguson, chip sealing 5th. Them are the 3 that have to
okay.
be chip sealed.
Well, that's kind of what it's in. So it's the straight shot on Whitney, the downhill on North 2nd, and Ferguson is
Yeah.
what's.
Well, and the rest of 2nd here. So it's all Whitney and 2nd that he figured into it.
No, he cut out the 2nd. He only did the
Yeah.
straight shot on Whitney, not even the curve.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And then North Second, not even
I guess I don't see his description, all he has is
Oh,
seconds.
the pictures.
pictures.
Yeah. You see the yellow boxes he put in there? The perimeter? Yeah, so he's doing all of Ferguson, right? But then when you go to, I think it's the last page, he has just the straight shot on Whitney. That's what I'm saying. I kind of thought he was going to give us, the full Whitney plus 2nd.
I thought he was only doing the red dot.
The red. That's right. The red dots encompass what he is doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have the curve on Whitney or the straight shot of 2nd, and you only got the downhill, really the downhill portion of North 2nd. Right? Oh no, that's all of North 2nd.
Yeah, and Fifth isn't on here at all.
Fifth isn't on here. He said he could add that. He said he would do that separate. He would do Second separate because he saw the damage that was on those two streets and he knew that it was going to be a lot of work before he could even get to it. So he said, I won't even, because
Oh, you're talking about Second from 40 to Whitney? That's not on here?
yeah, no, the patch seal did a lot on that street. They covered a large portion of that street, and it changed the game on that street. The patch seal that
So
Pennington did.
we don't need to chip seal it then, is that what you're saying?
I don't think we do. I don't think we need to chip
They
seal
just need to
second.
come back and finish their patch seal. They need to finish their joints and cracks that they didn't do. You know, 'cause like I say, I would have had them, every little crack, every little control joint, every spider, I'd have had them, I had them do that before. And that way it was done.
I didn't tell them not to. They elected not to. I think because of the process they've gotten used to, where Dustin said flat out, he's like, that is not what we would crack seal that. If we are gonna try to get it filled with patch seal, we would wait until it's wide enough because the cracks aren't even this. For the patch seal to really take, the stone has to get down into the crack, and the cracks are too skinny.
How do they do it? Do they have a gun that you pull the trigger and it shoots the oil out, and then you pull the trigger again and it shoots the rock out?
They can switch back and forth. They can do it both. So it's always blowing air. Well, so they blow air, and then they can add oil or chips to it as they like to.
So they could just fill the crack full of oil and then put oil and chips on top of that, right?
That they could, but that's basically they said that that's something they don't do anymore. They use crack sealing.
It's just because it gets in there, but it won't set up right, or
I think it's the longevity where the crack sealers. It's a very viscous rubber. It's like a solid.
So are we paying the mobilization for them to come back and finish what they didn't finish?
Different.
Or a
This
whole
is
second
different.
job?
This is a Simons. I don't think Pennington had a mobilization though.
Because we're a government entity, so they're exercising that privilege to us. And that's why we've used them so many
So what they
years.
missed, that was with Pennington, that you're talking about?
That's why, for the price they did, having them do every crack, every niche, I told them before, never miss anything, do it all.
But
That
we
way it's
can't bring
all
them back to
sealed.
do it.
Yeah,
We can't,
Well, we could, but
Pennington.
that's where I got into the crack seal machine because one day of them was $3,500.
do you know why, like on Ferguson, where you have the shoulder breaking off, or the edge of the road breaking off at the shoulder, why they patch sealed some of that and not all of it?
They pretty much told me that when they started working, when they went to work, they did the parts that they know will be effective and will last.
Uh-huh.
They skip the parts that they know won't be reliable and where it won't stick and it won't hold up, and
So what are
pretty
we
much doing us
supposed
a
to,
favor to not throw money after bad.
what are we supposed to do with those areas?
That's where we use either a cold patch or a hot patch to rebuild the asphalt.
And that stuff is gonna have more longevity than a patch seal on there?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, we get hot patch asphalt. We're basically paving.
the problem
Paving.
with that's why I would have had them, even if they didn't think it held up, I'd have had them do it all. You know, because that way then when they come in to chip seal, whatever they brush off, they brush off.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, the hard part about hot patch, a guy should be 3-inch thickness when you put it down. And most of what we're doing is 2-inch, 1-inch, you know. That's the bummer about not having the maintenance the last 3 years, 4 years, is that we've lost them shoulders. And you get the bigger truck traffic, everything else, that's the other problem.
Well, is there something we could do in the interim that will hold us off until next year and we chip seal next year? No?
I feel like
The roads.
our options are either to have Pennington County come out and do more patch seal.
Or by the machine.
Yeah, well, we definitely need.
We could do both or crack. So either crack seal or we have Pennington County in this machine, and that between them we could get it done for 10, 12. So that
Yeah,
will
but,
last us another year?
I mean, if they're gonna come back, then we gotta tell them to just hit everything then, right? Because the thing is how are we gonna fix the shoulders on Ferguson per se? If they're not gonna do it, cause if we gotta do a hot patch and it's gotta be 3 inches, well, that road is only that thick down there. So it's gonna have to be some kind of patch seal, either that or me and you are gonna have to put 8,000 bags of UPM all along the street.
Well, that's why we're talking about hot patch, just getting a ton at
But
a time of
he
hot
just
asphalt.
said that you gotta do hot patch 3 inches thick in order for it to work right.
So it's
Right, just like that, so it won't crumble. So we're basically doing all the work for something that's not gonna have that much longevity, even if we do hot patch, cause we can't put it 3 inches thick, we can only put it like, 3/4 of an inch thick maybe,
If you're building a road from scratch, you need 3 inches.
yeah?
The only thing that would scare me, if we did the hot patch on something like that, we would have to keep them off of brooming it and seal it with the chip seal. Do not touch that edge. Anything that we did a hot patch on, they could not touch it with a broom.
Right.
Because all they're gonna do is separate it then.
Yeah, cause it's sticking.
There's
the hot-
nothing to bind it.
Yeah, cause it'll only stick to asphalt, but there's no asphalt down there.
So if they chip sealed over what we did hot patch on, which would be the same thing as cold patch, the only thing with
Yeah.
UPM is it binds because it has an adhesive with the
Yeah.
chemicals that are mixed in it. And that stuff actually adheres to whatever you put it to. That stuff is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do the hot patch to fix the shoulders, then we don't want them brooming that area. We want them to seal it so it binds it. It's basically coming over with a seal coat on the whole thing then.
Yeah, but the thing, I'm just thinking, what if they do it anyway and they start flinging hot patch off on accident or something and we did all that? I mean, it's gonna be manual labor to put that down, right?
Yeah,
Whereas we have Pennington County come back and just spray patch seal, is that what it's called, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Just spray the patch seal down, extra oil, extra rock. I mean, maybe it's not what they like doing normally, but, at least we have a base that we could build chip seal on. But even the thing about chip seal though is it's a lot of money, and where are we gonna pull from to get the money?
And it's not even just again, the roads it's not just the asphalt. We still got gravel. We've got the whole Ferguson development. I mean, I drove through there. You drive through there every day. It's trashed. The roads down there, every road in town needs attention.
Yeah, McDermott needs to be, I don't know what you do there, cause if you chip seal over that, cause it's got that hump right down
You
the
can.
middle, and then there's basically a terrace. So you gotta build up that terrace and everything before you even chip seal it.
Yeah, none of
And
that
I
is
was gonna
even
just-
close to
Yeah,
ready.
Millings over that.
yeah, you
whole
just gotta
thing,
do millings on that, I
You
mean,
know, and then the rest of Ferguson, to me, is cake.
Yeah.
What's down there to fix is easy.
I mean, it was pretty
In
good
day,
for a
I can
while.
Fix that.
Before the snow, you had it pretty good down there, I thought,
We just needed moisture to work with our millings, and we don't have, and haven't had. And
yeah,
that's why when we get rain, I'm out working the areas over here, because I have moisture to work with. When I drove down Ferguson and Donna and all of that over there, like I say, in a day, I can fix everything in there. That's all easy stuff.
yeah,
And what I've got in the rest of the town, Vilas is good, Manning is good, Third is good, Fourth is good, Fifth needs the boil done. West Main, I cleaned up all over there. It needs gravel. We're gonna need 4 loads of rock there. And then by the school is gonna need rock there,
Yeah.
because the big rock's coming up over there, because that's had nothing
talking about on where everyone drives in,
down on Vilas.
Violet's, yeah.
Yep, that, like I say, there's been nothing done to any of them, added to them like it should have been, over like that I did. Every year I'd add 2 to 3 loads to the school to West Main, to Taz Court, the areas where the rock's coming up. And none of that's happened for 4 years.
So yeah, I mean, so kind of where I'm at on this is I feel like this year needs to be repair year, as much as possible. Repairs, 5th Street, the corner, the North Second, get everything repaired, and if we can patch seal enough to where we can cover through to next year, I think a staggering portion of the roads have already gotten enough work done to where they are sealed. So we're not going to lose them like we could have. Because again, we've got the Boyle on 5th, we've got the corner on Whitney, we've got still North 2nd, we've got so much repair to do. So, you know, if this is already pushing us another $30,000 over budget without considering anything else, gravel maintenance or any of the other roads, just for this, we could be at 50,000 by the time, over budget by the time. And we can't neglect the potholes on gravel because that's going to destroy people's vehicles. We have to get all of that done.
Is it possible to get a new estimate that includes what Dan's, where we're at, about 56,000, plus your material, gravel, labor?
Yeah, 'cause I haven't put anything in for labor for prepping everything, you know, which I'm donating 50% of everything if it's a set. If it's not, then I donated it all. You know, that's the way it is, but it's what I wore down on my broom. I'm gonna have to replace all the bristles when I'm done with everything on it. But it's a matter, I can guarantee you, even with what we patch, if we don't do North Second and Ferguson at minimum, we're gonna lose them. I mean, we can patch and seal all we want, but they have to have a complete seal on them to minimum. 5th Street's at that level too. Everything that we did for millings over from Gables and all of that area and that corner and coming around is all honeycomb. If we don't get that patch sealed, we're gonna lose that whole corner. And then
But
you
we're
just
looking at a
look
bid from, is it Simons or Simmons? Simon? For 74,000 total, but it doesn't include 5th Street or 2nd Street, you said.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about does, and that's 56,000 versus 74. So I guess I'd just like to see it reorganized under the lower amount of, if it covers what we actually need and is getting it done. And I haven't heard from Linda through this whole discussion, so I don't know.
Linda, are you there?
I think she has us muted.
I think she went to sleep.
It's so the pricing is basically based on square footage. So he uses those boxes he makes on the map.
Right.
He plugs them into the software and gets his numbers. So
Well, I don't disagree with that, but if it doesn't include what we need and it's already at 74, how much, you know?
I mean,
And you
unless
get a new bid from him that includes 5th and 2nd or what we talked about, but we still need.
well, Dan, what would you be taking out? What would you not be doing considering what he quoted us for? Because Ferguson and North Second guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So all that's left is Whitney.
Right, which you don't need it, well, you just need the patch seal, the rest of it.
So Whitney is 5,300 square yards. 5th Street is going to be about half that. I mean, it might, if we exchange doing Whitney for doing 5th, it might drop us maybe 10 grand, maybe down to 60 something. Just
But
going off the square
It's
footage.
gonna be a matter, you've gotta pull it out of general fund and supplement the budget.
It sounds like it just needs to be rebuilt and put back so they're in good shape again.
Cause the bummer is we should mag water everything too.
And I do trust Dan's opinion because he's been doing roads for so long.
So we wouldn't have lost the last 4 years.
Can I
We
sneak
wouldn't be
in here
this
sometime?
predicament.
There, we can hear you, Linda.
Okay, thank you. I can't hear real well, but my thing was gonna be, we need to mag water and mag water well. Very well. Because it's a horrible dusty mess. are we gonna have, I heard a little bit of talk about the street budget. Is there gonna be funding left for that? And that being said, Terry, we should have monies left from,
I need to press.
you know, Jill's position, because it was uncovered for 6 weeks, I think. So that should be 6 weeks worth of finance that we have to use.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it does not have to be used on roads. That is a board decision. However, I think that the mag water is a very important thing. And I want to make sure that we have enough. Yeah, I know the roads need to be fixed too, but they need to be coated on the top too.
Can you get us a quote for that?
What's up?
Can you get us a quote for that so we can vote on it at the next meeting?
Yeah, and what I'll, cause I'll call ZNS, but, and I was hoping to have all my paperwork drawn up for you guys, but what I've saved the town in dumpsters and pushing dumpsters and the road work that I've done, you know, I originally turned in a bid for $3,500 to fix what streets we have. And I went on every street that the streets I said I was gonna fix, I fixed. And went above and beyond that and fixed all the other streets too, all the other shoulders that I've cut off on Vilas, Manning and all of that. You know, the dumpster alone number that I saved was almost $7,000 from what we haven't had to dump, because they were being dumped every month. 2 dumpsters at $500 a pull, and they were being pushed for $50 a push. So the pushes were $700 by themselves of what I got in my logs, and the dumpsters from last November.
Cheaper than we coin.
And
We
then
appreciate
what
you
I've
doing.
done on the streets has been it would have been another 35 to 5 grand. So there's been 13 grand saved just in that on volunteer work. And will continue, and is continuing.
I'd like
you
to
know,
see that noted and put into the street file, just for comparison, you know, when we do budgets again. I appreciate all the work you've done on them, and it's gonna be a board decision, but, I think we should discuss, you know, paying to replace your broom attachment or whatnot.
Well, I'll have a proposal that I'll get to you guys for stuff, and it'll be a consideration. Maybe consider it, fine, maybe don't, fine. You know, it's what I've done for the last 25 years in this town to save so we can make a 25,000 a year road budget work. Otherwise, we couldn't have done any of the above and beyonds that we've done and made them work.
On the same token, I'd like to say there's a lot of other people in this town that has donated time and they haven't gotten the recognition needed that they need, so, you know.
All
I
right.
think we thank them at every meeting.
I'm not talking about my husband. I'm talking about other people that have done things for the town
Well,
that,
that's why we have the volunteer of the year, that we read all the letters.
All right, so, as far as
I don't know
this
that-
quote goes, I think we kind of covered what's going on, kind of where we need to be with things. We're just gonna figure out how we're gonna pay for it, I guess. So going forward, did you wanna talk to Simon and swap out Whitney Street for 5th Street on the quote?
Yeah, I'll do that and see what numbers he comes back with.
And then, but then the other thing too is then we need to budget in fixing 5th Street, getting rid of all the whoops and the whatever's in there. Get that all fixed before the chip seal. Then
Oil, the mag water.
we're also gonna need to add in, I guess, unless we're gonna do hot patch ourselves, or we're gonna just have those guys come and do the patch seal on the shoulders on Ferguson and on North Second, just to put a layer down that the patch seal can go on. You know what I mean? Because the thing is if he's worried about the longevity of it, is that longevity affected if you patch seal right over it? You know, within a month or so?
It's as far as like going over the shoulders that are basically just dirt because everything else is broken away. Oh, it doesn't matter. Patch seal or chip seal, it's not going to last.
So then how do you fix that then?
Asphalt, hot patch or cold patch.
Yeah, but I mean, how's that gonna stick to something that's not asphalt any better than the other two aren't gonna
So
stick?
ideally, what we'd want to dig is to get millings underneath that, a base of millings, and get that reactivated. Actually that's a really becoming a very common thing is for people to use the millings method, to lay down millings and then use water and reactivate them and bring it back to life as a road base. But the tar and chips, they're not dense enough, they're not compacted, there's really nothing holding them together. You hit a shoulder that's basically comprised of chips and tar, it's going to rip apart. They're not going to hold up.
Yeah. So then so you're saying we do a hot patch on all the shoulders before the chip seal?
Hot patch or cold patch, yeah. That's why I was kind of saying is like, if we could make this a repair year and get everything to where it's as tight as it can be structurally and as sealed as it can be using seal and hot and patch seal, using crack and patch seal, so that if we can get it to where we can get through this year and then just next year is like, all right, let's just chip seal everything and now we know we're good for the next 3 years. Because that's my worry is if we run over those shoulders with patch seal or chip seal, it's just not going to hold, and we're going to be.
Well, one thing that has broke the shoulders down is that garbage truck.
Yeah, that doesn't help, and that's the only way to get that to stop happening, regardless of what we do. Chip seal, patch seal, out patch is to get a road base under it. Because the garbage trucks, you know, especially Fifth, they built that boil because it's just dirt under a very thin layer of millings, right?
I'm just gonna say one last thing, if you don't chip seal minimum Ferguson and North Second, all the work you do is not gonna do it till next year. You'll lose them, cause they're breaking apart. They're coming apart. There's 4 years of no maintenance. If you don't do them two minimum, you're gonna replace everything. Guaranteed.
I did hear, I haven't actually contacted, I did hear a couple other options for chip seal, smaller organizations. So maybe I'll go down that route too and see if I can get another quote, somebody who is a little gentler mobilization or no mobilization. I'll find other options. I don't think this is a pressing matter because we don't even have the prep work done. Even if we wanted to chip seal, we still need to get other stuff done first.
Yeah, well, we definitely need to get the prep work done.
It'd be nice to see these ideas kind of zip together of what we need and a price. But then under that, some bullet points of, in addition to these, that we need to, you know, the meg water and
Right.
material and what we're, you know, labor for.
So like a comprehensive solution.
Right, there you go.
Would you wanna,
I would have no idea how to zip these together, because he's getting the new numbers from them.
yeah,
Dan's gonna submit something for this,
What's
your
that?
plan, your $56,000 plan.
Well,
That was
it's basically putting together what Simon's is gonna
Taking
do.
part of Simon's and adding stuff.
The only thing I'm going to provide is what services I've provided that I was going to donate. I have a breakout on all of that, to what costs are. And then Simon's, if you get a
So
quote
add yours
for
to the-
just what we've got on North Second
Adjusted.
and Ferguson.
Yeah, Shanna, the 56,000 dams. I think he was saying just do it. That's just the adjusted Simon quote, swapping
Right.
out Whitney for yeah. So I'm
Get
gonna
those
call.
new numbers and then
patch
add
seal for the county.
Dan's list of his costs, so we can kind of look at, like you said, comprehensive.
Yeah.
Are you-
Because we're gonna wanna do this in what, mid-July when it's hottest, or early July? When you do this stuff,
Whenever
with the
they
meg
can get
water?
it done. We've gotta have it
Oil.
done before September. Cause
I mean,
after that, you lose your window.
Megwater was best on a hot day.
Mag water is when we can get water put down. We used to do that before the fair.
Maybe you're
So
thinking of
we
oil
tried to
or
hit it
something.
in July on mag water. And then I
Okay.
used to use all my water truck and water everything ahead of it. 'Cause it's the only way you can suck it in.
Okay, well, so, Shanna, did you officially step down off the streets committee?
Yes,
or you
I did.
Oh, okay,
I told Linda I could help upload stuff in the computer as far as, so that it's kept track in the, like a, what, work order or something for the street, so we can go back in history and see what all we've done, so after we make a
In
decision.
the Silversmith program?
Yeah,
Okay, I can add you so you can have access
I
to that.
think, engineer already did that, Anthony.
Oh, did he give you,
Created an account for me.
did you get an email?
I'm not sure, I
Okay,
haven't looked
yeah,
for it yet.
okay.
I haven't.
I haven't
need
looked
yet.
lately, but
okay, well, so, are we pretty well lined out what we need to do for, as far as, I guess, updating Simon quote? You said you wanted to check out, see if you could find some smaller vendors that give us a better price.
Yeah, so adjust Simon to swap Whitney for Fifth.
Yeah,
I'll try to get a hold of those.
Or a minimum there in Ferguson and North Second. You know, if we've got to scratch and dig, them are the two worst.
yeah, I mean, Fifth's
So
gonna,
get a
do
couple
that.
estimates.
And then 2 more days of patch seal on Whitney and Second. We'll take care of that. And then if they had time, if they got done with that, go on to Fifth. And do the intersection you want to do. And we work on a number for the boil.
Yeah, what I've been told about Simon is you get what you pay for. They're the best. And when we get ready and we want when the town is ready to have the best streets it can possibly have, but this year might be a year where we need to keep other options open and see if we can.
It just depends on what they would do them 2 streets for.
Yeah.
And then we get them fogged after.
The fogging, I think, is absolutely necessary. I'm pretty sure we're on the same page with that, right?
We've never ever done that, and that's why, and I'm not trying to look back, but when Bituminous came through here, I kept saying several times, we need to get on that, because we could get on the state billing. And
Yeah.
nobody,
Yeah, that's a fair cost on here, but that's just they lay down the tar, lay down the chips, and then fog over it. So it's one more layer of tar, and then it basically turns it into a real road surface. And I don't see a point in chip sealing unless we do fog seal at the same time. It's what people do now.
chip seal works good without the fog, don't get me wrong, because that's what everything is. But the
Right.
fog
It
is
locks it
another
in,
layer.
yeah.
It is.
And then it goes from maybe 2 years till we have to do it again to 3 or 4. And that's where we got to get, is to where we have the next 2 years locked down.
I have a question.
Shanna?
Ask the other board members where we're at and your feelings about doing a supplemental budget to get the streets where we need them this year. How does everyone feel about that? So we know what we want to see in estimates. Like if we're not going to supplement,
And we're gonna have to do some
Do we need a different
supplementation,
plan?
aren't we? So
Well-
we'll have, what, 30 grand left in there?
Yeah, about 32 remaining. If we brought our current year's budget up to match what it was 21-22, we could supplement another 7 grand. If we brought it up to match what it was in 23, the biggest year I have here, that would give us another. That would put us at about 50 left, 60
You should
left.
supplement the amount you're short, not just
Right.
yeah, I mean,
bringing
it's
you up to last year won't do you good,
it's good for research purposes of, you
It
know,
is.
money,
Yep.
but,
definitely.
doesn't play a part in supplementing. We're gonna be taking it out of general fund, I'm assuming. You know, our reserve or whatever. So I was just curious how everyone feels about doing what needs to be done this year, or,
I mean, I kind of like, if we can get a good enough result with going with a smaller contractor, and we do what we need to do this year, and we save up for another year to have Simon come in and do the Cadillac chip seal, I mean, then we'd have 2 layers at least on the ones that we did this year, right?
I don't know who else is out there, I've never seen anybody else chip seal other than by Tunimus and Simons,
Okay.
so I don't know who else is out there.
There's some newer guys that are apparently still pretty hungry for work,
what
but they're
about
doing
you,
good
Linda?
work, so.
Which is scary.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I don't like the idea that we keep taking from the general fund, because pretty soon the general fund is gonna go on too. So I think we should try to save them this year and then,
Do a minimized plan? Okay, what about you?
they gotta be done, but, you know, we don't need to Cadillac them this year because of where the budget's sitting.
The
Yeah.
extra money we've spent on the projects we've had?
Well, yeah,
Well-
all the other money that's been spent.
You know, I think in terms of a classic car, you know, we've got a project here. How about we get it mechanically sound and then put the fresh paint on it next year? But, you know, let's make sure the roads are solid, that they are ready to last, and then seal them. So then we have 4 years before we have to do it again instead of 2 or maybe 3.
Well, and that way we can budget for it.
Right. Then we can divide that, you know, then we can
Right.
say, all right, now we know these roads, once we seal them, they're going to be good for 4 years. So now this is nothing if we're distributing it out over 4 years, you know?
What about you, Linda?
Did you get
It's-
this?
I'm here, no, I'm here, I don't hear quite well enough to feel like I can give an opinion on that. I just know that we need to put money into our roads. We need to, we have to have a plan. And it sounds like you all have been discussing some good plans, and it's just, like I said, I can't hear the details well enough to make a decision, which reminds me to please make sure that I do not get paid for this meeting.
Add it to the road budget.
Yeah, there you go. Add it to the road, but thank you.
I think you just bought us a couple potholes, Linda.
We're kind of sitting in the same spot of, not a, Cadillac version, but a good, less expensive repair plan. So
Yep.
we'll have to supplement some, but not as,
Well,
Not
so
Cadillac.
if we don't do Fifth at all this year, is it gonna, I mean, how can it get any worse? You know what I
Fifth
mean?
will survive before North Second or Ferguson.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
When you-
So
don't
if we
chip
just-
seal them two at the minimum and fog seal.
so if
What you're
we,
thinking
yeah.
you're saving, you're gonna be putting in to completely redo them. Which we
Double.
did that 12 years ago or whatever, where we had to completely rip Ferguson out and start
Yep.
over again.
oh,
We
wow.
had to
Yep.
hire a milling machine,
wow,
that was an expensive.
Yeah, I remember that.
so we don't wanna do that.
Well, so we
So
gotta
I
do
have a
Second
question.
and Ferguson.
I got
Wanna
a question about Fifth Street. Anthony was checking into, grants that specifically dealt with near schools for roads.
Mhm.
Has he given any further information on that?
I haven't heard anything of you guys.
I had a meeting with him Friday. He kind of forgot about, so we rescheduled it for this Friday. But I'll make sure to bring that up.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk to him about, in this new age of government that we seem to be in, seeing if there's
Right.
any grant money at all coming down the pipeline for roads, and making sure if there is that we get some of it.
Exactly, yes, yep.
So
Okay, thank you.
I guess then what we need to do for the Simon quote is just remove Whitney altogether and just go Ferguson in second. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask him to, to do, it's all, again, all it does is the square footage. I could ask him to do one swapping Whitney for fifth, and then one just removing Whitney.
Yeah, okay, that'd be good. And then,
Yeah, a couple
Um,
of them.
yeah, and then so Terry, as far as, supplementing and stuff like that goes, if we're gonna do that, I mean, where are we sitting as far as the general fund goes and everything? I mean, is there something we could comfortably pull out that you would see that would be, it wouldn't be shooting ourselves in the foot in the
Well,
future? Or?
Anytime you supplement, you have to supplement out of the unassigned
Uh-huh.
portion of the fund. So you have a budget and
Okay.
so much of it's assigned to your budget and
Don't we
then,
have that 6-month CD that we just did in January that would be coming up in June?
the
With the new
two
bank?
CDs we had for the water are have been
Oh, those were
matured. We had the 140,000 that we took of Preston's, and that's in the First National Bank, but we did a 1-year CD with that, and that's to help with the plating costs of the Preston. And the other two were that was the money we got from Custer County, that 500,000, we moved it from Pioneer Bank to Bank West, and we put it in 2 different CDs, because we got like twice the interest. So we did earn,
And that was for the water.
I think total we earned over 20,000. We
Oh.
earned 26,000 on that 500,000.
So,
Interest?
so how much do we
So-
have unassigned right now? Is it
That I
just
don't know,
interest?
I'll have my financials for the meeting next week, because I just did the bank reconciliation, and I'll do the financial reports, so then we can see.
So we can really only supplement, like what you're saying is what is unassigned then?
Well, that's where it comes out of, and it's basically your cash, and then so much of it's allotted for your budgets, and then the rest of it is what they consider, unless it's like restricted funds, like the TIF was
Yeah.
restricted funds,
Right.
because they're looking to be sent for TIF, but, yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure it's there, it's just,
I mean, so if what did we say we had 30 in our road budget for the rest of the year, right?
32.
Right now,
32.
32. I figure, looking at the past, we're gonna burn up about another 8 to 10 on utilities for the electric for the streetlights, because that comes out of there. So yeah,
Out
we're
of the 32?
out of that. Yeah, that's
So
like
then-
exactly what we have, and we still got the rest of the year to run. So
I'm
like
just
right
talking
now,
like,
we're at, considering the other expenses,
so more like 15.
probably. Yeah,
So we got
We have
50.
15 to spend on maintenance.
yeah.
Is what's in the maintenance budget is 15?
Probably, well, 15 to 20, yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood is what we would be at after we account for everything else that's probably gonna hit. So this supplement would be 50 grand, 40 grand,
50 to
grand.
60,
We need to
including
find
all
50
the other
grand
repairs.
somewhere.
And I was just gonna say, Linda, cause I know you mentioned it, I'll go, or mag water, who, Dan? We'll get a quote on mag water for everything?
Yeah.
Just to have the quote?
Yes,
Everything
Steve.
except for what would be chip seal,
This
All the
magnesium sulfide, they call it, magnesium
magnesium chloride.
chloride, yeah, get a quote for
Okay.
all gravel, because we're gonna want that either, regardless of this, right? We still got,
Yeah, so let's just get a comprehensive package together. If you need any help on any of that, just give me a call, I'll help you out with it.
alright,
And then, let's just figure out what the number's likely gonna be, and then maybe overestimate it by 5 to 10%, just give ourselves a cushion.
yeah.
Then we can talk some actual numbers as far as what the supplementation is gonna need to be in order to get all this done this year.
Mhm.
So anyways, Dan, did you have another thing to add before we move on?
And I was gonna say, in the past, we have done emergency supplement to where we can pull from that because of infrastructure falling apart or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if a guy has to, you have that route, that justifies it, where you don't get spanked.
well, but you should typically supplement your budget before you spend it. Because the budget gives you the authority to spend money, And I know, and it's, the county did the same thing, they wait till the end of the year, and then just, because it's an ordinance and you have to have 2 readings and all that, but, any meetings I've been to, like with Rod Fortin, who's head of legislative audits, that's really not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have the money in your budget before you spend it.
I guess that's what I would
So to do it
say.
before, I mean, it'd be nice to have it in there, then you just write the check and you're good. Otherwise, it overdraws you in your budget.
So what you're talking about is what we're proposing doing right now is get our ducks in a row. We basically do the supplementation and then we go and do the project.
Yeah,
Okay,
then it's in your budget,
yeah,
you don't have any.
okay.
So then you'd probably wanna make that 55,000 to give you a little cushions. You don't wanna overspend and then have to do another
Right.
Oh,
appropriation.
yeah, I mean, we don't even know what it is really gonna be yet, so, we'll do that, but then we'll overestimate by a
Yeah,
percentage of,
but roughly
5 to 10.
50,000.
yeah.
At least is pretty,
Ish.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we did the Cadillac this year, we're at least 50, at least.
You have a key under what,
We should do, I'll try to put a number together for the corner to get the drainage off of there too.
Oh, yeah.
And then we can do the poor man fix on that for right now. So the Cadillac would be curb and gutter and doing it all the way around, but right now we could cut that, resod it, millings it, and at least have it satisfied. Get the water off there and that'll help tremendously.
I mean, the real Cadillac would be this bit here plus the 5th Street and the 2nd Street and everything else we need, we'd be looking at probably 90 grand.
One's too many.
And we only have 15 of it, so then you're looking at what, 75 or? So, I think what we're discussing is less than the Cadillac. And yeah, if we could get a couple options, different options from them,
Yeah,
and you can bring your numbers and you can look at the budget. Do the supplemental ordinance, I think we'll be good at the meeting, right? We can stop talking about street.
we didn't even
Oh,
talk
and
about
ask
the,
Anthony about the grant.
yeah, we didn't talk about ditches and drainage though, cause there's plenty of, Cal had a really good idea to help our ditches last longer is to
Wait,
rock line them.
what was that again?
Sorry, out of order, my apologies.
No, I just wanted to accentuate the comment. Sorry. This is an informal work session, Mr. Dick.
No, to help the ditches stop eroding those bad over time is to rock line them, whether we do river rock or like large river rock or riprap, to get the ditches lined so they stop loading up.
I would do like a riprap like what they did on the basin. The river rock will move and stuff over time, especially sitting on a hill.
Yeah,
And
You know.
silt in.
Yeah,
And-
and silt in.
and with how steep North Second is, that strip where we've been working, with how steep that hill is, that would be the test bed if we were gonna see about that. To line
Yeah.
the roadside ditches with riprap so they stop
Washing away.
washing away.
If you,
Because that's why they do the basin, right? So it doesn't wash
Yeah.
away, basically.
Yeah, more or less.
Basically a
Hold down the
rednecks.
dirt.
Oh, it's fine.
curve.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something we could do in the
Next curving
future.
Yeah.
Maybe next year or something like that, right?
Yeah, but at least the
It's
trimming.
cold in
Uh,
there.
No, that air is,
could you, Dan, could you
It's right here.
give us numbers for that also for whatever shoulders you think you need to
But then
scrape?
that's me.
Whatever, yeah,
I sit down
whatever
and I
shoulders you
watch
think you need to scrape
Oh.
to make sure that we don't keep holding water where we don't need to be holding water.
yep, they were.
And then long term, we can, like riprap or something when we have Trump money.
Yeah. Okay, well, we all good on the streets now?
No, yeah, we all good on those streets.
All right. Welcome back now, you hear?
Darn tootin'.
All right. Well, let's move on to everybody's favorite. I think we could probably combine C and D for purposes of discussion because we're talking about 9110 and then 91.01 to 91.09. So we might as well just go from 91.01 to 91.10. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, so,
We have
Um,
9101 here. So
Yeah,
it is.
that's
yep, so 9110 is 1C, and then 91.01 is 1D. So you can reorder them if you want, or whatever, so, I guess I'll open up the discussion here. So I do know, back when I first started the board, this was kind of a contentious matter in that,
Sorry.
there was I guess there was a difference of opinion on how, abatements should be done. And when I read through this, it seemed to me that unless it's like a public safety abatement, then any abatement notices should be run through the board. I don't know, do you guys see that when you read it, or how do you all interpret that? And 9110B is basically the main one that I looked at that seemed to tell me that, which is, should the complaint be declared valid, the town board of trustees, upon majority vote, may give the violating owner a courtesy notice of the violation of the first offense. So that,
So the first offense has to be approved through the board and then followed up after.
right, so then the notice for a complaint should be after a board action, which declares the complaint valid and then thereby releases the notice of the violation of first offense. So that's for complaint. Now,
But then 9103 kind of contradicts that.
with the enforcement authority,
Right.
right? And so, I think this was kind of one of the main sticking points was you got the 9103 and you got the 9110. And there's probably a couple other ones in there too, like 9105 abatement by town authority, but 9103 enforcement authority, that's, the board of trustees may appoint an authorized agent for purposes of performing inspections, providing appropriate notifications of violations, conducting enforcement and abatement action as may be required to ascertain compliance with ordinances of the town.
Different than a building inspector.
Yeah, so, yeah, and so I think these inspections, what's the heading for this chapter, Terry, do you remember? It's,
the
cause this is all just
nuisances,
nuisance abatement, right?
yeah.
Let me look it up real quick.
So I thought the enforcement authority was like, when you do the subcommittees, then you appointed people to be on the code enforcement.
Yeah,
authorized
Linda and
agents. So Linda, we have Linda, Donna, and you right now.
Oh, three of
That's how
us?
they revised 318.
Yeah, and that was never done that way before.
When I know last year, it was Linda and Jill, and they would go out and run, look around the town and then decide who needed an abatement. I thought that's, whereas in a complaint is like somebody complains, their
Somebody's
neighbor or
turning in
something,
a
and they're
complaint,
turning in a
yeah.
complaint here at the office, and it can be anonymous. And then that, I think, has to go to a board member, and that's, supposed to be within 2 days, decide, is it valid, and then proceed. Joan's got her hand up.
Complaints should be their own separate. But they're all in the same ordinance.
Yeah, the ordinance is headed under public nuisances. So, yes, if you have a complaint regarding a public nuisance, then this is the procedure you should follow, and then, like you can see, Aaron, did you have?
Yeah, I just have a quick question while it's in my head.
Yep.
Just kind of wondering, so I guess part of the trouble in the past is where there were situations where it was kind of a, one person could recognize something, then effectively turn it into abatement, go through the process. Now, I guess I would be curious to know where everybody stands on that. And I have a thought is, if we're gonna be a 3-member committee, is that how we are now?
So, she put me on
Yay. Well, you know, like a 3, all right, so I'm just thinking it'd be a headache if every single complaint had to go through a board meeting, right?
Right.
That would be a nightmare. But can we set up the ordinances to where the subcommittee of 3 has to
Make a
meet
decision.
regularly and vote on individual instances, you know? So it's not like, so it still has a checks and balances sort of component to it, but it doesn't need to be during a full board meeting, because that could get out of control. But I'm just wondering how everybody else feels about basically one person being able to just kind of go through the whole process. It's kind of, because that's kind of how this almost looks like.
The unfairness starts there when you have a separate committee of that nature, because if there's any hardships or feelings or anything else, it does not work. And that's why Jill kept a spreadsheet of all the abatements. Then it came to the board each meeting and said, these are the ones, because you have 2 separate addresses. Your immediate ones, of course, for nuisances, noxious matter, and so on and so forth. After your first notice, you can act on them immediately. You do not have to wait for continuing notices, which you don't have that listed in here tonight, but in the other portions of that, it states on noxious matter and so on and so forth. You can act on them and give them 48 hours to have their mowing done, their thistle done, their whatever other circumstances. But for the board then to go through and cross-check that as members, that's where the fairness comes through. If you're not following it, if it's a serious one, let's take, for example, the lot over here that the town, whether we collected all the taxes and whether we're in that position, we had to have that mobile home removed for the individuals that lived there and abated that. And it was a 2-year process to go through it, and then we finally were able to destroy it, remove it, and get it out of here. You follow your first, second, third notices on everything that you do on that aspect on serious abatements. But for your melodious or any of your tall leaves, grass, any of them, you don't want to go through that situation where you can take on after the second notice and remedy it by where you're at with the members that you have. But it's keeping neutrality on that and a balance. There's so many right now that aren't in that balance for the weeds and grass portions of it, that you need to keep that neutrality. So that's where it's hard to just give that authority to 3 members and let them run with it.
Well, the way that the ordinance reads, if we're talking, so the enforcement authority, and it's the next section after prohibited conditions. So if we have a prohibited condition, which also, you know, includes, goes into more detail in 9101, talking about noxious matter, nuisance, and weeds. So you have your prohibited conditions. Therefore, your enforcement authority can be taken up by that appointed agent, which in our case, I think is the committee right now. Okay, any one of them. And then, and they perform inspections. They also provide appropriate notifications of violations. They also conduct enforcement and the abatement action, which would be, the abatement action would be to remedy the situation. So in the case of a tall grass, then they would take that take the step to remedy that issue, right?
Right.
That's kind of what I was saying, right? So it's like 9103 gives a pathway for one person. In may appoint an authorization. So basically, any member of the committee could go solo, identify, notice, and take action without even necessarily needing to consult the other members of the committee.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying, you know, that seems extreme. So at the very least, to dial it back to where all the members of, or the majority of the committee members need to agree that it is something that needs to be abated.
And how would that be done? I mean, you have a committee of board members, which is 3, which is a quorum. So then it would have to be done in some kind of an official meeting anyways, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's why we always had 2 on subcommittees, but
yeah, but the thing is what, on this one in particular, we're dealing with prohibited conditions. And so some of these are things that need to be taken care of quickly and not necessarily waiting up to 2 weeks for the next board meeting, or even 3 weeks if we got an
For a
off
regular
month.
board meeting, right?
Yeah, so,
inspections,
where a quorum-
notifications,
Maybe your committee should
Doing
be
that.
2 people, so you don't have to worry about a quorum.
doing the abatement
that's
action.
good, that's a good point there.
Obtaining legal counsel if needed, and then giving the report at the board meeting.
Yeah, so
That's required for
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
She said that.
And,
7 days.
and that's why it does say in here that you do have your first notice, then they have to require to do it within 7 calendar days. And then it goes into where if he's a continuous violator, you can give them 3 days in this subsequent violations. So that's where in this, it's given the committee that authority on weeds, grass, and that to be able to deal with it right away. You know, so you aren't waiting past that 7 days because health, safety, welfare. That's what your abatements and ordinances are all based off of, and why you're able to move forward is health, safety, welfare.
right,
That's why if you have, it was great with the finance officer or the clerk, if they didn't live in town, that neutrality was more of an even playing field then, as they looked at everything. You
so
know?
are you volunteering Terry to go do all the abatements?
But the new assistant would be awesome. And
Right.
then you know, get somebody like Linda that's been with it and put the 2 of them. And then that way you have an unbiased committee of 2, as what you stated, and they do the drive-through.
Well, yeah, I don't know why you'd have 3 and have to worry about a quorum every time you got together. Because it has to be posted 24 hours.
Right, but it, also going back to these abatements is, I think they only apply when we're talking about the prohibiting conditions from 9102, which are further defined in 9101. I think that's the whole point of why they organized it like this.
Right.
So it's, you know, it's things that are, like you were saying, a public health, safety, and welfare type of thing, or public health and safety type of thing. I mean, the thing that I think that we should get away from is doing HOA type stuff, where we have people able to kind of do the things that they want to do on their property without, you know, being encumbered by the town unreasonably,
Right.
you know. And so to me, this the prohibited conditions and the further definitions with the noxious matter, nuisance, and weeds, I think is a good standard for that. And maybe we need to expand on these definitions slightly to make sure that we are capturing only public health and safety things and not necessarily, you know, more subjective criteria in that. Before Dan, does anyone else have anything to say, any board members? Donna?
No, I'm with you.
All right. Linda, did you have anything to add? Are you still there?
I am still here, and yeah, I just think that it's too strict for our country town. You know, the ordinances about, yes, the lilac bushes, any bush. I mean, right now it's saying that you can have any bush in your yard can only be 5 foot tall.
Yeah, well, that's another section that we're not looking at right now.
Right, I know that, but
But the thing is too, is that, I don't know if that falls into the noxious matter, nuisance, or weeds particularly. And so I think if we use that as our baseline for, what will or will not be abated, then we can discuss the things about the 5 foot tall bushes as more of a, you know, a subjective opinion, which, you know, and I'll get some more input from Neil and stuff like that and see what other towns do and see, well, is that just, is that 5 foot rule on the bushes, is that,
So that stuff's.
where did that really come from? Is that just a preference that somebody put in there or what?
Yeah, 'cause
Joe?
they wanted to be able to see.
I was told long ago that Rapid City had the same ordinance. Well, if they do, they don't enforce it.
Right.
Because when I was driving around Rapid and the lilacs are in full bloom and not, they're really matters right now, I know. But I'm just telling you, they were, some of them as tall as the houses.
Right,
Yeah.
And we want to be less strict than Rapid City.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to not be Rapid City
Dan?
at all.
I don't know if
And
they
I
even have any
agree.
ordinances, some of them
You
are
put it in a great
horrible.
positioning that, but the site triangle is the big thing that Rapid City enforces, because I do a lot of work for code enforcement in Rapid City. And the weeds, the noxious, the railroad right-of-ways, the big corporate right-of-ways to the residential. And it's a situation where when you lay that out, our right-of-ways, like Donna, had that situation down here with Dollar General, where she wanted the right-of-way mowed up and out to the highway. That's exactly what should be done. The school should be maintaining the rest of the slope over here out to the highway. And then we had Nichols stop us over here when we were doing the UPM and mentioned how bad the thistle was in the school's containment pond and how it has moved over into his pasture and caused him problems. We have the gentleman on the corner of Fifth Street where Lauren Lentz used to have, and I think his kids are in there or whatever now.
West Court.
Yep, that whole corner is a disaster, and the thistle that's there, and they never maintain any of that drainage area there, which they are responsible for that. So we have the one on Second Street that's constantly a problem. The right-of-ways need to be maintained on these commercial properties too. Down there by the movie theater, we used to make them have to mow all of that down in the bottom when Nagelbauer's owned that. And Preston's and his development, we made them take care of all of that bottom down there and mowed that, you know? So if there were the 5 acres or more, then fine, you do your buffers, is what we had said. And that way then we had a good situation. But the ordinance itself is in great context, and the process of notice is in great context. It's a matter of having the right two people to be the context and neutrality to go through it.
Yeah.
Aaron?
I think so instead of doing like a meeting, maybe you have to have at least signatures from at least 2 people from the committee. If we're gonna have 3 on it, at least two signatures of committee members before you can send out a notice. So, because I think, and it is a thing that I've heard has happened, is where one individual may have just kind of gone down the path all on their own without necessarily conferring with anybody else. And I think that's one thing that we don't want as a general rule. We never want that to happen. And I think a minimum of 2 signatures from members of the abatement committee before any notice can be sent out, right? Does that sound reasonable?
And then the spreadsheet for you members to know. So that way it's posted and dated when the signatures are, they're on the spreadsheet, the address is on the spreadsheet. And then that way you all have,
I made that spreadsheet.
yes, exactly right, and it was awesome, and it's still awesome. It's the
It works,
perfect
it just tells you
notification
where
for
it's
the
at and
board.
what the abatement was and the date, and the date of the
Yep.
notice, so you know. when-
Yep, and the notice, and if it was assessed or addressed, or, it's
Right.
just like Chuck's punch
fixed or
list,
assessed.
when you put that together and had it, where, was it satisfied or not?
Right. My question is on, well, first of all, 91.03, the important word is the Board of Trustees may appoint. So you do have the option of doing it however you want. You don't necessarily have to do it by appointing one agent or two, a subcommittee, or have, contracted out or whatever. But in 9105, abatement by the town authority, in the first sentence, it says, upon failure, neglect, refusal of any owner to comply with the notice provided for in 9104. Well, 9104, the agent's authorized and empowered to notify in writing. But that's basically to cut, destroy, or remove weeds found growing. So that's basically your courtesy notice, right? Your first notice. But then when you look at 9106, pursuant to 9105, it's almost like 9105 needs to include 9106 instead of 9104 because it's talking about I should know the word. Certify. It's like your next notice and your next notice and your next notice, right? Or if you have to assess it and collect payment on it. And then you
Well,
have another bite.
I think for 9104, it just talks about notification. And then, and it just talks about the notice. And I think on 9107, it goes into more detail about said notice in that one. So depending on the situation, it could be the first, second, or third notice.
Right, but then you also have the one that's immediate. So you have your first notice, second notice, third, but then your, what was it, for health, safety, and whatever. If you send that one, that's a one-time do it now or else.
Yeah,
So that needs to be in the notification guidelines.
right.
And when they talk about 9104, failure provided on the notice, they're not talking of, they're talking about the first notice and not the second, third, and fourth. So it's like maybe in 9104, the notification process or something shall begin with, starting with the first notice. So that you're implying that you're acknowledging that there's a 1, 2, 3, you're out kind of rule.
So how
And
much
you're
time
providing the
frame is
first
that?
one. I don't know, because that's not really in here either. Well, it says usually 7 calendar days
Yes.
Well,
between.
this says 3 calendar days, and then,
This one has 7.
uh,
Reinspect.
then that one says usually 2 weeks.
I'll be right back. You guys gonna be good if I take a break?
Where are you going? You leaving town or?
Relationship.
Going right in
Yeah, and then
Oh.
number 2 on the
I don't think I have
notification.
to leave town to get
Weeds,
that
tall
done.
grass, unhealthy, dangerous violations require only 1 notice. And they need to be removed within 7 days.
I know,
So it's
that's
like
just
your
good.
notifications of how you want. When they're on the spreadsheet and you're rechecked, you have to know if it's rechecked in 3 days, rechecked in 7 days, like we need the ordinance to be equal to that, so they know when they're supposed to recheck.
Maybe
And
you
if
just
it's
need
a-
to streamline the whole thing, maybe there's some
Yeah.
there you don't even need because they're already in 91.7.
And
Just
when you,
add it all to that one.
when you have a first notice, that's like 1 N for notice, maybe it's a 1 EN, like a, one time only notice, so that you know they're not getting the second, third, fourth, it doesn't apply to that. And then how to determine whether it's a 1-time notice or a first notice. because they're both talked about in both sections of weeds, tall grass, noxious matter. Then you have it the same way as those requiring only one. Weeds, tall grass, dangerous violations require only one notice, so. Doesn't that
Yeah, if they don't
contradict a little bit?
They don't take it in.
I mean, that's why everybody gets confused on,
Well, yeah,
Is
and
it
it's
the
a
first
time
notice or is it
frame,
the one
and
only
then in 30
notice?
days, it could be worse than when you first started the whole procedure.
But see, we pounded it that way because of legality and that enforcement. So the first notice gives them the full 7 days, then that takes where they're on from there. After that, they only have 3 days, and we have so many repeats. So that's why it was followed through.
so
that
first
the
notice,
is
courtesy
the
notice
first
is 7 day.
And if they don't handle it, then if you get a second notice, then it's immediate action and.
Second notice is 3 days.
Correct.
Third notice, third and final notice, right?
Same.
Is
You
another
know,
3
if-
days.
And then you go into the condition that you have a contractor. And
And then
on every
abate.
one of them, if they don't satisfy in the 7 days, you can hire your contractor and he mows. And then if it's a second violation, then you only have 3 days because you're in the subsequent violation. So after a subsequent violation, every time,
Yeah, and I understand the difference between mailing one and then, you know, putting it on the property and then the third one gets sent certified and blah, blah, blah with the dates, but it just seems like it needs to be summarized or organized better, so that
And
when I
that's
read
why
this,
I
I
guess-
can clearly see if it is a one-time notice, only once, and if it's not done in 7 days, we're gonna do it, or if it's a courtesy notice that gives them 7 days, and then a second notice that gives them 3 days, and then a certified
so
third
the-
final notice that
yeah.
gives them another 3 days, and then we abate it. 'Cause one way you only get 7 days, and the other way you get, what, 7, 3, 3, and 3.
but you only
16
get
days.
7 days. the
So you're
first
looking at probably a month down the
Right,
road.
so that's
before it's gonna be
like the
taken care
one-time
of.
emergency,
Yeah,
noxious for the health, safety,
then
welfare.
That's your
then it's
first
out of
warning,
hand.
take care of it.
And if
by
it's-
then you're paying big money to fix it.
Right.
So we need
yeah.
to be able to easily separate whether it's a one-time 7-day notice, or if it's a,
Second notice,
or
3
if it's
days.
a courtesy notice followed by a second, third.
What do you mean by separate them? Just as far as
Because
in
they-
reading this,
Well,
or?
because they both claim the same things. The 7-day where you get the courtesy notice,
Uh-huh.
and you have 7 days to do it, and then you get a second notice, 3 days to do it, and a third, another 3 days. That said, that includes the same things of weeds, tall grass, noxious matter, and other nuisances. However, paragraph 2 specifically says weeds, tall grass, unhealthy nuisance violations require only one notice with 7 days.
I think,
So you need to be able to separate in which instances is it a one notice immediate dangerous situation versus a regular abatement where their first notice is courtesy notice followed by second, third, fourth,
Where do
because they
you,
both say the same thing.
where do you see, for the weeds and the grass, where do you see that time period?
Well, under 9107,
Oh, okay.
the first paragraph talks about the 7 days noted in a door hanger. Paragraph 2 talks about weeds, blah, 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 violations require only one notice, and that's also 7 days. And then it talks about the second notice, which would actually go with paragraph 1 after the courtesy notice. Paragraph 2 is almost like a, oh, by the way,
Mhm.
you know, following it, where B talks about the second notice of violation. Somewhere in there, we highlighted 3 days somewhere.
3
But-
calendar
There's a
days.
dangerous
When you go
ones.
back up to 9104, it's talking about the notice shall be notify the owner occupant to cut, destroy, remove, otherwise remedy such weeds, tall grass, noxious matter, and other nuisances. in their notice, they're talking about the first notice, courtesy notice, not paragraph B where it's exactly the same thing, weed, tall grass, and noxious matter. So to me, that's the circle where people get confused on what to do. And how to strictly define when section paragraph 2 takes over and it's a one-time notice, get it done or we're gonna do it, or they go through the other process.
Only one notice.
I know my mouth is
Yeah,
shut.
so it seems like we need to add, it into the text, like, where it has the number written out, we put the parenthesis digit to draw attention to the fact that we have a number there.
For sure.
Probably also put a table somewhere in here that talks about what you just said and lists out, okay, for this is, after notification, this is what you're required to do. And the thing is the 3 days from number 2 shall be remedied within 3 days of the date of the notice, which is funny, but then
Yeah.
it says, shall be removed within
Within
7
7.
days of the postmarked or hand-delivered date. So it's strange, okay, because it's malodorous, unhealthy, or dangerous. Okay.
That's why it was
Yeah.
separated.
So then that should be a separate line on the table then.
I think
Joan?
this might be, one that you might have even had Neil look at and take out all the repetition and put it in a streamlined form that if it's weeds, noxious, blah, 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 this is the process. If it's a
Yeah.
health and safety violation, this is the process. I mean, it's rather conflicting in certain parts here, and it's very repetitious anyway.
Yeah, how it takes you in circles and that's before you
Aaron?
get to the rest of it.
Can we just strike out that sentence, weeds and tall grass shall be removed within 7 calendar days of hand-delivered date of the notice? Because, I mean, any situation where weeds or tall grass need to be removed that quickly can't really justify that outside of a dangerous condition, which is already described. I mean, so you think somebody goes on vacation for 2 weeks, a weekend their grass is tall, then they get back and you're
Right, we don't wanna be that,
jumping down their throat when they're on vacation.
right.
So even if let's say there is weeds or tall grass that is dangerous, you don't need to identify weeds and tall grass. You can just say, well, it's a dangerous condition, we have
Like
to deal
an
with it.
overgrown site triangle or something.
Right, where I think having it specifically say weeds and tall grass when it doesn't necessarily have to is opening up a can of worms. And just say malodorous, unhealthy, or dangerous violations, right? If it's infecting a triangle, it's dangerous. Whether it's weeds or a tree or a lilac or...
Well,
Yeah.
thing about tall grass is what I was told is it's a breeding ground for mosquitoes around here, is that true? So that's one,
Or ticks, or
ticks or rattlers.
spiders, or,
Yeah.
I mean, it just unlimited, and that's why the attorney is the defensible side, why all of these items were put in there. Because between Haig and Mitch, both are the ones that reviewed all of this and said, leave it alone, because if I gotta go to court over somebody, and 98% of them, if they're going on vacation for 2 weeks, they're making arrangements for somebody to mow. And if they don't, then they doggone well better be calling and saying, Terry, I'm gonna be gone, don't abate me, we'll take care of it when we get home. But otherwise, they were able to take this to a court of law and defend it. That's why they were so repetitious in everything they put in there, is that, what do you mean it was only in there once? No, it isn't, it's in there 3 times. You can't
it's
tell me you
creating a
didn't
circle.
read that.
And then it goes on to say, if you've done the same thing or you dealt with this person within a 2-year period, again, you only have to give them 1 notice and then they have to do it within 3 days. So now you have to keep track of the past 2 years of, have you had a problem with this person? And that immediate notice is no longer 7 days, it's 3 days on a repeat emergency. noted.
But you can about tell each time who is the one person who
That's because they are obviously having problems with
But generally
the same
repetition
people over
would
and
be
over.
so many times within so many months, not 2 years. Once every 2 years. I mean, repetition generally refers in most instances to, you know, we've had to tell him 3 times in the last 6 months. That, to me, that's repetition.
And then they only get 3 days instead of 7. So yeah, you need some kind of,
That's
List,
we kept on
checklist
the
that you can
calendar
easily
year,
look and
so
say-
you can look back easier.
this is what's going on, and we know how to treat them.
Okay, so
And then
we're,
we need to add a paragraph that says save the lilac.
Should we take
We will
a,
not complain about
Shanna, come on.
free,
That's a
free.
different ordinance.
do we need a recess?
That needs a whole chapter
I
all
think
to
we need
itself.
this.
What do you mean?
We can talk about this forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, I think
Well,
we're onto
the-
something with letting Neil just, and Anthony just chisel away at this before we look at it
I
much more.
really do think it's, I mean, maybe the lawyer deliberately did write it that way, but as a citizen or as the board, you still need to be able to reference and understand.
Yeah. Well, I
We don't
think,
speak attorney.
Yeah, exactly, and you don't speak 3 different processes for the same violation.
Right.
yeah, I think maybe, like I was mentioning, some notation for calling out the calling out digits for English words or English numbers in there. And then a table, I think, would help too, by just clearly delineating the so-called offense or the abatable situation, and then just kind of summarizing that, the notification guidelines and stuff like that in a table, and then just appending it maybe in either at the end of the chapter or, you know, a dash B or C or whatever in one of these, you
I
know.
think we need to rewrite the whole thing.
And remember I mentioned to you a graphic
look
for the
like it.
site triangle. We need like a
Right.
full page graphic image of how you actually check a site triangle.
Oh, yeah, we had one. During all the discussion,
Yeah, we should have one right in
Last
here.
couple
This is exactly how you check it,
Yeah.
so nobody gets confused. It's
Well, that's part of
still get
the,
confused, but
well, that's part of the other chapter that we can call out too. And,
yeah.
so as far as this one goes, I guess what I could do is go through and build the edits that I mentioned, if you guys are okay with considering those at the meeting, as far as not really at this time changing necessarily what it says in there, but just changing the presentation to make it more clear.
Yeah.
Oh, hi Linda. You
Um,
still there?
Are you guys okay with
I am.
considering that at the next meeting?
I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're gonna hash it over and hash it over and hash it over, and we have.
Yeah, when you look at the
Well,
exceptions, it's
I
still the
w-
board can perform all duties and exercise the power, and shall have the power to make special exceptions and provisions of this chapter. So really, the board can do whatever you want anyway.
Who's this again?
9108
Yeah.
under exceptions.
Very,
Does that mean I can have 10-foot tall grass in my yard?
That means you know, whoever, the
So
subcommittee
garbage
has
or the
signed off on
sacks.
it, they sent them a letter, we get the list, and as a board, we can say, no, we're gonna throw this one out. We don't want you to cut your lilacs down to 5 feet.
Oh, I would add, Cal, I would add, it's 2025, I think we can have photographic documentation of everything. I think that could be a requirement in there. Take a picture
Oh, yeah.
before you abate
Has to
it,
be
Oh,
included.
so it's
yeah,
like it has
Okay.
to, you know.
And that
include-
should be able to fit into the software when you, with each property and their account, that you can attach it,
And silver
that
smith.
you had it, yeah.
You can put
You had
abatements
an
in silver.
abatement, this is the picture, this is the date of the notice.
You see, this Board of Adjustments is what I wrote in against every one of my abatement complaints. Because the Board of Adjustments, as you go on into the ordinance farther, is basically a board set up just for the complaint of somebody disagreeing with that. So on every one of my statements, when I got my complaint, I put in there, I want it exercised through the Board of Adjustments and looked at. And basically, the Board of Adjustments is a court of law within the town board who looks at that situation and says, no, them individuals who made that decision did not make the right decision. Or yes, them individuals that made that decision made the right decision. So that's why it says 75% of the owners and property owners within 500 feet sign this. You have a regular Board of Adjustments, which is just like equalization for taxes, or you have a separate board that reviews this, and that's where exceptions are at.
Does that-
So, and every one of mine, I wrote on there, I want a hearing by the Board of Adjustments.
No, I'll be,
Is that in state law what the Board of Adjustments includes?
What's in our ordinance?
Where?
And then the rest of the next sections of the ordinance,
I think
it
it's a
states
codified
how
law.
you
What a Board of
involve the
Adjustments
Board of
is.
Adjustments.
It's like 3 board members and then 2 others, whether it's the attorney and the engineer or others. When we had the planning and zoning board or person, it's not necessarily the same as the board. I don't remember where it's at though.
It's in the next section of the ordinance.
Sign in
Choose the Board of Adjustments.
he's the one with the
Is there
ticket.
more than
You're
that?
recording, right?
There's more after
Alright,
91?
we are losing our battery on
Oh,
this
you
thing,
should go
so.
to
I'm
the
all
thing.
got it.
So,
Then we go on to 9110.
where do you think would be a good spot to mention the photographs?
Haven't had fast, but
Probably under 9110, the complaint.
9110.
Goes through the paragraphs of how they're supposed to do it.
gosh, I couldn't tell you. It's probably some-
Guidelines, notification guidelines. Well, some,
Well, the complaints are different than the abatements though, right?
well, complaints
Yeah.
Yeah.
aren't long, are they?
Detailed, in 9103, detailed reports of all action taken by the appointed enforcement authority will be provided.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's
there
gone.
it is, yeah.
Was that-
So the,
Detailed reports with photographic documentation,
No auctions.
9103, something like that.
103, enforcement authority?
Yeah, it says detailed reports of all actions taken by the appointed enforcement authority will be provided at each regular meeting of the Board of Trustees.
Thanks.
Detailed reports including
Drink a couple beers.
images
Yeah, detailed reports with
of all action taken, including.
of all, yeah, of all
Maybe just
action.
a new sentence at the end, this report, this detailed report shall include images or something.
Whatever, yeah, just whatever we need to make sure, but if, yeah, they have photographic evidence that there was something.
Include photographic evidence.
So
okay,
the town has its own camera.
I need to start borrowing that. My phone's
Okay.
loading up.
all
Now,
right.
all these boards are gonna change in June, right? When we change
It's got a few cracks in there.
What you talking about, Willis?
all the subcommittees. We review them in June.
Yeah,
The first meeting,
Election officers and the questions.
yeah, right.
right.
All
Since
right.
I'm not on streets anymore, this would be one that I would be interested in being on.
On what?
Complaints.
Complaints? Okay.
I can see you're not much of a picnic
Or
table guy.
abatements, whatever, that's the problem, we group them together, but they're dealt with separately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I have a question on complaints.
yeah.
Do you know of any other municipality that would accept a verbal complaint?
No,
Yeah, I don't think
A
that
citizen
should
come
be,
in and give you a verbal complaint?
you make them write it down.
Not east of the Rockies.
Every municipality I checked on all has a form that they have to fill out, or it's
Right.
not acted upon.
Exactly.
And I don't,
So
you know,
strike
I
or
don't
verbal.
care that their name is kept private among the board and no one else knows, that's as it should be. But I still think they should have to fill out the form.
mhm.
Just, you know, when someone comes along and says, oh, I had 15 people gave me verbal complaints this week, you gotta wonder.
If you,
Well,
I
the,
always told them, if you don't write it down, it's not gonna matter, and then the
Right.
complaint
It's-
has a
I just think
number.
that should be taken out.
Yeah.
well, that's a good point, and the thing is as a result of that,
Take out or verbal.
A trustee on the town board shall, within 2 days, investigate the complaint, which means that you're obligated to investigate any and all verbal complaints.
I don't think they should be put on the spot and have to run for every verbal complaint down.
Well, that,
If
but,
that person is serious
Yeah.
about complaining, they
right,
should be serious enough to write it down.
absolutely. I was just adding fuel to the fire that you started
Yeah,
by,
right.
by
Well, shouldn't
drawing attention to the fact that per the ordinance, we're obligated to investigate every single verbal complaint within 2
Okay.
days.
so we scratch out verbal or verbal.
Yeah.
And
Or
you're just,
verbal.
I
you're
like
just
that, yeah.
going,
And then at the beginning where it says, should any member of the town board, shouldn't it be the, should the town office receive a written
Finance
complaint?
officer.
yeah.
Should the office of the finance
Usually the
officer?
clerk or someone receives those
The
written
clerk?
complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
the
So,
town office
any member of the town board or the finance officer?
Or town
Or
office.
town
Most
office.
people
Or town
Just
office.
come into the
And
town
just the-
office and would
can
drop
you
them
just
off.
call it town office or most of town office?
Because anytime
Should the
anybody
town
came up
office?
and complained to me, I said, go take it to the office and put it in
And
writing.
then we make them,
It would
Like that.
diffuse it usually right
Sure.
then and
'Cause a
there,
lot
but
of
then
them
they
won't, yeah.
decided, nope, I'm not gonna do that.
Yep, okay, Aaron?
Alright, so the complaint shall be required for, shall be initiated and shall be anonymous. I think anonymous is wrong. I think it should be held confidential, who is that brings in the complaint,
Right, it's
but
up
it shouldn't
for
be
the board should
anonymous.
know,
'Cause-
But not the public.
Right.
So should we just put shall be confidential?
Anybody who submits,
Where's this at?
the
Sorry.
complaint shall be required before any courtesy notice or abatement action shall be initiated and shall be anonymous. And shall remain confidential, not shall be anonymous. Because if somebody
Right, and
puts-
shall remain.
and have put
confidential.
anonymous on the form, and I'm like, you check the box that says notify me of your decision, and then you wrote
Wrote anonymous.
anonymous.
And you know what, you really ought to look at that form. I don't know where that one came from, but it's crap.
I mean,
You're
yeah,
not,
I can't anonymously
Well, and the
notify
thing is,
people.
Every time they come in written, the finance officer knows who is coming in, even if they put
Even-
anonymous
yeah.
on it. But I wish I'd have had this discussion, because every time we tried to get rid of verbal or anonymous, we got struck down, because they felt it was a citizen's rights to where you didn't start a Hatfield McCoy from two neighbors when one neighbor turned it in to another neighbor.
What,
So
yeah,
that's why we could never get rid of them statements. To me, if you're bold enough to say, I am tired of him having tires in his backyard and his grass is this tall, you can't see it because of the fence, then you go up and make that written notice.
right.
Confidential is plenty fine, you're not gonna announce that in a meeting. But
Right,
yet
it
this
should be held in
individual has to
confidence
sign
who-
his name to it. If you're serious enough to make the complaint, you're serious enough to have to sign your name to the complaint. And the verbal, you're exactly right. That individual has to have the backbone to be able to
Fill out
come
the
up
form.
and sign the complaint.
but
Yeah.
it does need to be held strictly in, because we don't want somebody who's genuinely concerned with a neighbors being like,
Retaliation.
yeah, because that is something that some people,
Then work it out with your neighbor. That's what I always said. Go talk to them.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that in spite of the fact that Mr. Halsworth pointed at me when he said tires and tall grass in their neighborhood behind the fence.
yeah, but you two
I
aren't
invite
neighbors.
any town board member to inspect my backyard at any time, and they will find no such thing. And I'm gonna be I'm gonna get my own shirt saying my backyard is just fine.
Well, no, yeah,
All right,
that'd be
anyways.
good.
All right, do we have any more
Yeah. So can I
changes
go
here?
over the first paragraph again and read it how I kind of have it edited here?
Which one?
Should the Hermosa Town Office receive a written complaint, and maybe it should be an appointed trustee on the town board, because you're having your subcommittees do this, right? But by saying appointed, you really could have any of them. But what you have is a trustee on the town board, which means it could change. I mean, do you want it appointed for your subcommittees, I guess is my point. Shall within 2 days investigate the complaint, make immediate determination on the required action.
I think it's probably good to leave it like that, cause we can just have the understanding the committee is generally gonna take care of it. But then we won't be hamstrung in case the committee can't do it and somebody else could step in and do it.
Okay.
I mean,
Determination of required action, so.
I like
And
this,
then the required action, does that fall back into, and somehow should, cause it's all under the same ordinance, right? It goes back to the notifications that we're talking about. Is that their action? Whether it's a do it now, get it done 3 days, 7 days, or if it's first notice
oh, yeah,
on your complaint, because then the complaint, depending on what the complaint is, but it says determination of the required action,
yeah.
as noted in, what was it, 91 point something? Notification guidelines, 9107, when we get that fixed.
But if you get the, like you say, should the finance officer receive a written complaint, a trustee of the board shall within 2 days investigate the complaint and make immediate determination of the required action, and like everything says, but you'll have your spreadsheet. If that individual has already had the complaint, the finance officer is gonna say, ding, 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 this
Right.
guy's already had his first, now he's in the 3 day.
So
Yeah,
it goes back to the
That's
chart
the-
that we're talking
that's
about,
the immediate determination.
You know?
so
Okay,
that your complaints are flowing back to the abatement notification process.
Not when you're following that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is your Bible.
Well, right, but that's what we have listed in our notification. That's under 9104,
So how
notice to
long-
abate, section D, subsequent violation. So what I'm saying is the required action goes back into this flow of how to notify them, which notice they're getting.
I think
Like
that
you
was
said,
depending on the
Sister.
violation, maybe it's a health and safety, maybe it's just cut your grass.
Well, that's my point, but that's what this one does, right?
Yeah, they
So
make
it's just
the
a note that
decision.
it goes back into the abatement notification process, which
Yeah.
includes,
well, it does say or abatement action
Yeah.
down there, so it kinda calls that, it kinda calls that out right there. I mean, are you guys okay with just kinda the few changes that we made for clarity and photographic documentation, striking out verbal, adding town office, and then adding like a table and some extra digits for clarity?
well then, paragraph B says upon majority vote, they'll get the courtesy notice for the first offense, so maybe that should just be taken out. Cause you're already saying they'll determine the required action.
Well, this is for a complaint though, so the complaints are by definition less, they're not dangerous, they don't require immediate action, so we could wait for a majority board vote to declare it, to determine if the complaint is valid or not. And it's kinda like going back to the neighbor versus neighbor, you know, I think that should be a board vote, because then we have 5 people actually thinking about it in an open public forum and discussing it and saying, really looking into it, and then we can make a determination, because what we're doing is we're taking somebody's word that this guy did this thing and asking us to do something about it. You know, versus something that is obviously an immediate, like, if we have something, you know, 3-foot grass on a site triangle, you know, that's an issue, or 3-foot grass anywhere, that's an issue, because it's a, you know, breeding ground for pests and things like that, I think, so, anyways, John?
Well, in the past, even on a complaint like a dog running loose or someone's dog in your yard, it was never acted upon unless you took pictures and put that with your complaint.
Well, yeah, but in case in point in that one, I mean, okay, you'd wanna wait for a majority vote, but it's not like an immediate action could have been taken
No,
anyways.
what I'm saying here
because-
is that, there again, you can't just sign a complaint and say, I saw the neighbor's dog running around.
Mhm.
Because you got 5 people there that say, well, I didn't see it.
Right,
No, you need the documentation to go with the complaint, which would be your pictures, and there's gonna be a lot of instances like that.
Well, yeah, we got a barking dog a couple weeks ago. I went out there, there's no dog, no barking. I mean, you know, what do you do? There's some times where it's just,
Because they're inside taking a nap.
yeah.
But I guess my confusion is then we just talked about a complaint. Should the town receive a complaint, should the town receive a complaint, a trustee on the board shall validate it within 2 days, right? Investigate the complaint, determine, and make an immediate determination of the required action and notify them.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
But
the,
then in paragraph B, you're saying, should the complaint be valid, the board, upon a majority vote, gives the violating owner a courtesy notice as a first offense. So
Well-
you're automatically making, well, if we made it valid, it's a first offense.
I
Or
mean-
maybe that part should be taken out, and A and B contradict each other.
well, they do, except that the determination, I think, is basically just an indicator of, like, so let's say the person who is responding to this complaint, right? They're aware of kind of the process and how it goes. So then they make an immediate determination of the required action,
yeah, we keep losing our speaker.
and then they tell the plaintiff and the owner that determination, but that doesn't be holding them to action until it's declared valid by a board vote. But it gives them the opportunity to see likely what will the board say, and give them an opportunity to remedy it before it even gets to the courtesy notice of the, and because when you get to the courtesy notice, it's declared as a violation by the town board. It's not declared as a violation until the majority vote.
So you're saying, should a neighbor complain about the tires in the backyard and the tall grass? The town receives a complaint, one of the board members within 2 days goes and checks it, and they determine the required action and tell that person, the owner, that you're probably going to have to
And the
cut that
plaintiff,
down and remove the
Correct.
tires, but it'll be at the next board meeting for the board to decide.
right,
See, and that's 2 weeks.
It
At
could
maximum.
be 2 weeks more. I just think it should be printed more clearly like that of, I'm sorry, it confuses me to say they'll determine the required action and then the next paragraph saying it goes to the board after that. But it does say the complaint shall be required before any courtesy notice or abatement action, considering that states that they're different, shall be initiated. So that's just saying you need the complaint before you can do anything, in the same paragraph that they're saying they'll determine the required action. The second paragraph, upon majority vote, shall give the violating or owner, it should be like the proper notice of violation, and take out that of first offense, because it might not be his first offense. He might be a repeat offender, who knows? But B is telling you it's a courtesy notice of a violation of first offense, and that might not be the case.
yeah.
But if it's
But
that,
that's followed by a may also, so.
But is that
because
just,
me,
So
if
should
you're-
it, upon majority vote, I don't know, may begin the abatement process, or may begin the notification process, abatement and notification process, something like that.
or is that just notifying, like, somebody got a complaint and then you just notify, hey, we got a complaint on you and we're going to investigate it? Just kind of
Which one
forewarn,
is that?
in A.
In A,
That
notify?
determination, is that just letting the people know, hey, a complaint was filed, we're gonna investigate, and then further on, you would.
Well, it
make
sounds
the
like
same
it's after a
notification.
determination of the required action as well, so then they're notified of that determination.
Yeah,
And then
So they're
notify
told what that required action is good,
Okay,
likely to be,
yeah.
I think. Aaron?
I kind of feel like we're getting to the point where we're going in circles a little bit.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I think we're
I'm sorry,
reading more
it's just
into it than
confusing
what it
because
is.
Yeah.
It's pretty plain, but yet we're reading more into
But
it.
that's why we haven't been able to do abatements for a year, because you can pick apart the words and
Right.
say, what does it really mean?
Well,
We're
but,
just saying it should be simplified,
I think Cal,
straightforward,
yeah, I trust,
take
I
out the
trust,
confusion.
yeah, I trust Cal to kind of dial it in and then bring it back a new draft to us to.
yeah, I mean, if you have ideas of how you like certain sections to read, or points that need clarification, just,
Well, that's what I'm telling you.
yeah, send me an email.
Okay.
And then, when I get working on this stuff, then, you know, I'll take that into consideration and everything, but, I mean, the thing is, though, I don't think that I know we spent a lot of time on it, I don't think it was wasted, because I think everybody in this room has a better understanding of what is the purpose of this, kind of, what are the guardrails that were set up here, and stuff like that, and I know I got a chance to kind of get more in depth than I have before, so, you know, anyways, and it actually, we're required to know this stuff anyway, right, so it's kind of good that we're going over this, but in the future, we'll have to go over the one with site triangles and the one with the stuff that seems to be more of a preference rather than, you know, absolute public safety requirement and stuff like that, so. But overall, I think we did pretty good on this one. I don't recall any shouting matches, so that was good.
Darn.
Yeah, and anyway,
Dawn's
so,
working.
right, so if y'all are good on abatements and complaints, then let's move on to items from constituents. Do we have any items from any constituents in? Oh, Mr. Holsworth, I see your hand was up.
I just wanna make sure the tires and the tall grass are behind the fence and they're taken care of, you know, so. And I don't wanna have a Hatfield McCoy on this, so.
I didn't even see lilacs in this.
But I think
Thing or what?
all of you did an excellent job tonight, and I think you covered a lot of good ground. And I really hope we can do what streets that we need to chip seal this year. And I think otherwise, the great volunteer efforts are going really a long way, so.
Absolutely, yeah. I
Thank you
think-
for all your work session, hard work.
Yep. All right, Joan, did you have anything?
Just think you guys did a great job.
All
I
right,
like your work sessions because everybody gets to say something, but no one gets mad.
hey, what do you mean by that? Anyways,
Save the lilacs.
I know. All right, trustee input, Kramer, are you still there? I guess she's gone. Ferguson?
Oh, she is.
I don't really have nothing to say.
Okay, Harris, Shanna?
I think we all did a great job, and just
She said I'm
as a
hanging up.
supplement to what we're doing here,
7:30.
I had a note that we need to remember to update the complaint form, and maybe that Board of Adjustments, find out which ordinance defines that, and reference that in the ordinance where it had mentioned Board of Adjustment.
Yeah,
Just define what the Board of, just reference the ordinance behind that.
okay.
I think that's all I had.
I pretty much, my input I said before the items from constituents, so Service, did you have anything?
Not really. I think things went pretty well tonight.
All right, good. Very well. Okay, well, I guess we'll adjourn this work session, and thank you very